Chapter 3691. How could that be? Emolien hugged his wifey in amusement and rubbed her small face. I'll beat up whoever dares to speak ill of my wifey. Sir Jojo blinked. What if it's your grandfather talking about me? Emolien chuckled and said without hesitation. Beat him up then. Let him cause a ruckus in there. He doesn't know how good Jojo is. The little fellow pursed her lips and said seriously with a taut face. Your grandfather must be talking about me right now. He has a terrible temper. How could that be? Emolien couldn't resist laughing and tucked a strand of her hair behind her head. He then cupped her small face and looked at her intently. My Jojo's temper isn't bad. The little fellow nodded and said in full agreement. You're right. I'm usually too lazy to argue with people and don't want to get angry. That Shanisu was truly too much. If she didn't kill her and allowed her to annoy her every day, how could that be okay? Moreover, this already proved that Shanisu was a person of destiny, so she deserved to die, alright? Lien. The little fellow squeezed toward him and hugged his waist. She asked softly, now that we have time, you should honestly confess yesterday's matter. I'll confess everything. Prince Emo nodded repeatedly and sold out Duanyu without any integrity. Hey, it was Duanyu who sent me a message. That Rongli from Sangzhou has a hole in his head. He actually brought people to capture you. Originally, this matter was vexing enough. Who knows how many people were hoping for our wedding to go awry. Prince Emo huffed. So I contacted Duanyu in advance. He who strikes first gains the advantage. When Prince Emo said this, he truly didn't feel that he was too ruthless. Thinking about it now, he still felt some lingering fear. If Rongli really spread the news that Jojo had a portable spirit domain, the trouble in the future would be even greater. Arbor's big bright eyes stared straight at the man beside him. So you set up a trap and let Rongli walk right into it? Arbor couldn't help but blink curiously. Duanyu's message was vague. So how did Rongli know that I carried the spirit domain with me? Do you still remember Chen Baojia who escaped? Chen Baojia went to Sangzhou? Chen Baojia was kidnapped by Ba Shu from the academy. Arbor was enlightened. No wonder I couldn't find this woman. The Chen family still insisted that I was the one who hit her. It's really strange. Chen Baojia reported me to Rongli, and Rongli came to arrest me. Arbor understood the course of events and said with a nod. So you and Duanyu attacked him first. But he looked perfectly fine when he attended the banquet just now. Emolien smiled faintly. The little guy suddenly opened his mouth wide with a look of realization on his face. I know. The Rongli we saw at night. Emolien gently covered her mouth. Alright. It's already very late tonight, so let's rest early. I'll take you somewhere early tomorrow morning. After the carriage arrived at the Eastern Palace, Missouri Lien carried the little fellow down and strode into the bedchamber. When Sir Jojo saw the door to the bedchamber, his entire body went limp for no reason, and he couldn't resist exclaiming, What are you doing? Chapter 3692. The little fellow reached out and wrapped her arms around her neck. Her expression was slightly unnatural, and she instantly wanted to change the topic. So you're saying that you and Duanyu planned this beforehand? What do you mean by premeditated? You make it sound like we're bad guys. Emolien frowned in dissatisfaction. This is called strategizing. Victory is decided from 1,000 miles away. If it weren't for the fact that he had to resolve Rong-Li's matter as soon as possible, and that there were several people who secretly wished for nothing more than his misfortune, how could he have rushed to Heaven Saint Palace so late and caused his Jojo to suffer a bit of grievance? Don't think he couldn't find out which families were the culprits. Humph, when he settled down and freed himself, these people shouldn't even think about having an easy time in the future. Hubby, put me down. The little stoic said seriously. I made an appointment with Rotten Peach Blossom today to enter seclusion in Paradise Planet for a while. Emolien's eyes instantly narrowed dangerously as he looked down at his wifey. One moment it's Duanyu, the next it's Rotten Peach Blossom. Wifey, you've been calling out another man's name today. Sir Jojo looked at her husband in bewilderment and closed her eyes, pretending to faint. Dizzy, hubby, I'm going to sleep. Haha. Hubby's laughter was a bit scary. What to do? It's fine, you sleep. Wifey, I'll carry you to take a bath first. The little fellow's face instantly turned bitter, and the word embarrassed was written all over her face. Hubby, it hurts. Emolian retracted his hand and cupped her small face. He looked at her seriously and said, It's right that it hurts. Because our movements last night weren't very standard. This kind of situation requires more practice in order to make long-term progress. We'll slowly torment each other for a while, and we'll definitely be able to enter the realm of being one with the heavens. Why did he make it sound like they were practicing martial arts? What kind of fallacious reasoning was this? Hubby always had a belly full of bizarre reasoning, so how could she break it? This time, the little stoic also couldn't keep up the act and opened her eyes. Under the moonlight, those eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist. The dense moisture caused Emolien's heart to ripple endlessly. His fingers couldn't help but caress her small face, gently caressing it. It was so soft that it seemed like it could overflow with water. His gaze was glued to hers, as if they were going to be entangled for a long time. At this moment, their breaths were intertwined, and the heat from their bodies seemed to follow the air, completely evaporating and dispersing. The stars were shining brightly tonight. This feeling, this scene, and this heart lingered and melted into one. Jojo. He gently planted a kiss on her forehead and said in a low and hoarse voice, Remember to block that star field. Reaching out, Emolian lifted the bead curtain that was constantly colliding under the starlight and quickly carried her into the pool. Along with the sound of water that was neither fast nor slow, a soft moan that was mixed with heavy breathing blended into the night. The next morning, Mr. Jojo struggled to get out of bed with a sullen expression on his face. He was picked up by a refreshed man beside him. Jojo. Prince Emo rubbed against her face and said with a grin, Today's weather is really good. Look, the sun came out so early. Hubby will take you to a good place to stroll around. I guarantee you'll like it. Where are we going? The little fellow pulled a long face and glared at him in a huff. Hiking in the suburbs. The man stretched out his head and pecked her on the cheek. Chapter 3693. Although that guy had carried her away to soak her in a medicinal bath, she hadn't even moved her pinky. That guy had served her the entire time. However, Sir Jojo, who was slumped in the carriage, still felt sore all over. Every part of his body didn't belong to him. Get lost. When the little fellow saw him approach, she immediately narrowed her eyes vigilantly and swept a disdainful gaze at him. Emolian blinked and inched closer to her. He happily hugged his wifey as he shook his head repeatedly and said, I'll roll. I'll roll to your side, roll here and there, roll here and there. I won't go anywhere else. Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. She secretly suppressed the urge to laugh and maintained her stoic expression as she snorted. Emolian pulled her little hand over with a grin and kissed it hard on the lips. Jojo, hubby hasn't seen you for a month. Don't you miss me? She did before, but seeing how noisy this person was now, she didn't miss him at all. Hubby missed you so much. I even brought you many gifts that you'll like. The little fellow didn't even bother to bat her eyelids. She leaned against the thick carpet and stared at him with her dark eyes. Prince Emo was overjoyed and simply reached out to carry this little one onto his lap. Without waiting for her to roll her eyes in protest, he swiped his hand and took out a black lingji mushroom of excellent quality from his inner world. The little girl instantly forgot to struggle. Her large eyes sparkled as she stared at the lingji mushroom. Her little hand involuntarily touched it. I found this in the underground valley after the array disc in Grey Ping village collapsed. Emolian hugged her and tilted his head to rub against her neck. Isn't it very good? It should be a God-ranked medicinal ingredient. The little girl nodded vigorously. It was a God-ranked medicinal ingredient, and the quality was quite good. It was really very good. This kind of black lingji mushroom could also be planted in Paradise Planet's 100 herb garden in the past, and it could also propagate very well. However, it had a better place to go now. In Forest Planet, with the blessing of time, this black lingji mushroom should be able to grow into a patch in no time. A hint of joy appeared on the little girl's face. Emolian was so good at reading people's body language. Noticing that his wife was happy, he immediately took advantage of the situation and turned the little fellow's small face to face him with a serious expression. Jojo, return the favor. The little fellow stared blankly for a moment, his eyes wide open as he stared at him. Crown Prince Emo instantly revealed a pitiful "My heart hurts so much, my heart is broken. I can't take it anymore, Xiao Xiao. You've hurt me" expression. He clutched his chest and cried out in agony, "Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao, you're bad. In the past, whenever you gave me a gift, I would consciously give you a gift in return. Now that it's my turn to give you a gift, why aren't you giving me a gift in return?" Really? Sir Jojo had a confused look on his face. "What gift in return? Why do I feel like I've been trapped by this two-faced guy? You don't remember?" The little fellow looked at him accusingly, making Jojo feel a little uneasy. "It's not that I don't remember," the little fellow said stubbornly. "Then return the favor." Emolian winked at him. Oh, Arbor was thinking hard about how to return the favor, when Emolian suddenly hugged him and pressed him against her. "You really forgot. Bad guy. Then your husband will come and get it himself," Emolian muttered, his phoenix eyes shining. Chapter 3694. Arbor was taken aback. Just as his lips were about to touch hers, she finally remembered this fellow's so-called return gift seemed to be an indecent kiss. When she was still a child, this fellow used this method to trick her into thinking that she was young and ignorant. God knows how many kisses he had cheated from her. Sir Jojo wanted to push his face away, but her small hand was immediately wrapped in his palm. "Jojo, I still have a gift for you." This fellow was so mean he took out one gift after another, then asked for a return gift. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the pile of herbs by his legs. Along the way, the two of them spent their time returning gifts back and forth. When they were about to reach the villa in the suburbs, Arbor threw the herbs into Forest Planet and let Little Two be responsible for planting them. Afterward, she hammered this indecent fellow and grumpily said, "Let me ask you something. You just said that there's a formation disc under Greyfield Village? A talisman array?" "It's a talisman array." Emolian thought of the holy stone's location, and her phoenix eyes narrowed. "I suspect that there's a holy vein in the valley I fell into. I plan to ask Huifeng to bring a bunch of brats from the Purple Forest Guard to dig there in 2 days. She originally wanted to send Huifeng to Mount Heaven Saint to mine, but now it seemed that Greyfield Village was the best place. In any case, the remaining zombies there had all been wiped out by them. Even if there were a few that slipped through the net, they wouldn't be a problem at all. Now that the problem of safety was resolved, the matter of the holy vein had to be settled as soon as possible. Knowing that there was such a large holy vein, but not touching it didn't fit Emolian's personality. Our dear Huifeng, who was far away in Greyfield Village, couldn't help but sneeze and look up at the sky in confusion. Holy vein? It sounded a bit familiar. Sir Jojo blinked. "You mean that you found a holy vein in the talisman array under Greyfield Village?" Emolian nodded. "Yes. I reckon that the holy vein is quite large. So the branch of the ball that was left by your side absorbed a large amount of holy stone, right?" Emolian was stunned. She lowered her head and looked at Jojo from head to toe. "Did it affect you?" Arbor shook his head. "It affected Little Tree. He went into seclusion and hasn't woken up yet." "Oh," Emolian nodded. "Then it shouldn't be a problem. After I shattered the formation disc in Greyplain Village, I came out and met up with Huifeng and the others. After that, in order to save time, Little Seven and I returned to Dragonflame City. However, we encountered a lot of resistance along the way." Emolian's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Qin estate is adding fuel to the fire, as well as the Long and Gu families. I'm a little surprised that the Lin family's patriarch from Rong City is also involved in this matter. The Lin family wants to develop in Dragonflame City," Arbor said coldly. "This will depend on whether the lives of his disciples are tough enough." Emolian curled her lips mockingly and continued. "We were ambushed by a large group of people on the 10-mile slope. In order to replenish my holy power, I took out the holy stones." Balls Vine thinking of that scene. Emolian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That thing was like a mouse that had fallen into a rice bowl. When it saw the holy stones, it desperately crawled over and stuck to them. In the end, it absorbed less than 3 holy stones on its own. The remaining dozens of holy stones all went into the vine's stomach. It made everyone speechless. Chapter 3695. This really is a sentient tree, Emolien ridiculed. It only has a vine branch, yet it knows how to snatch food from others. Arbor's eyes curved. Lien, while you were at Graping Village, I also did a lot of things. The little fellow was in the mood to talk for once. She recounted to Emolien everything that happened in the Mu family's Chaoyang pavilion without stopping. Then she blinked and said to him, I think that the sacred vein you found in Graping Village should have been left to me by Patriarch Chaoyang. Didn't you say that there were layers of talisman arrays left behind by a heaven-level talisman master outside? It should have been done by Patriarch Chaoyang. Emolien thought carefully and couldn't help but nod with a smile. It really is very possible. Then do you want to go? Emolien rubbed his wife's head. If you want to go, let's go together. Arbor pondered for a few seconds and made a sound of agreement. She nodded. Of course I have to go. But I heard that the Academy's Tianyuan ranking is about to open. I want to find time to go back to the sect. Eldest senior sister has been awake for a few days. I should send her back first and reunite with second martial uncle and the others. The carriage suddenly shook and a cry of surprise came from outside. They had already reached the south of the city, and the carriage was heading towards the capital's suburbs. The carriage abruptly came to a stop after a sudden movement. Emolien grasped the little fellow's hand and hugged her. Her voice faintly traveled out through the curtain. What is it? Arbor pursed her lips. This guy was one face in front of others and another in front of her. He was especially good at bewitching people. For example, he took off his clothes and turned into a beast. Put on clothes. He was well dressed. But he couldn't change the nature of a bad guy. Reporting to your highness, the road ahead is blocked. Change the road. Emolien ordered coldly. Your highness. The coachman hurriedly said. The outside is blocked by the crowd, and we can't turn into the left side road. Emolien lifted the curtain of the carriage with one hand and glanced outside. Sure enough, there was a sea of people in front of them. Even the crossroads were full of people. The two of them got off the carriage hand in hand. When they turned around, the road behind them was also blocked by the crowd and carriages. They were in a dilemma. What's up ahead? The little stoic asked curiously. I don't know. Why is the road suddenly so congested? Complaints could be heard from the crowd. A woman standing next to their carriage stealthily glanced at Xiaomu and Emolien, and she was secretly speechless. Suddenly, she felt a chill on the back of her feet. The woman looked down and hurriedly took a few steps back. She cried out, Oh my, where did such cold water come from? At this moment, the little stoic was currently standing on a stool. When she lowered her head to look, sure enough, she saw a layer of water flowing over from the direction of the city gates, mixed with a multitude of miscellaneous roars. Move aside, move aside, move aside, all of you move aside. Wow, aren't these people from the Long family? What are they doing? What are they transporting with so many carriages? This bunch of grandsons blocked the road ahead and behind. Everyone was grumbling, and the little stoic also jumped off the stool. However, before her feet touched the ground, she felt her small body being picked up by Prince Emo. The ground is very wet. Emolien looked down and disdainfully lifted her feet. The surface of his brocade boots was already wet from the water. Chapter 3696. Arbor lowered her head and looked in the direction of the Long family's carriages. Sure enough, she saw the Long family's dozens of guards, cursing and shoving the passers-by, trying their best to pull the carriages over. The main reason was that they had more than a dozen carriages. If they passed one by one, it wouldn't be blocked. But they had to line up, squeezing in front and back, taking up the entire road. The passers-by complained incessantly. The carriages on the other side, and the pedestrians' carriages behind them couldn't pass at all. In addition, the Long family's carriage was like dragging a large coffin. The carriage was nailed all around with nails. Not even a small window was opened. But there were rows of thin holes on the carriage walls, as if to let people breathe. Water flowed out from the holes. More than a dozen carriages were of the same design. Over time, the water flowing out from the holes gradually made the entire street wet. Arbor's eyes gradually narrowed. Her heart felt inexplicably heavy, as if her breathing was being suppressed. Looking at the carriage's design, her heart overflowed with a trace of a bad premonition. At this time, the Long family was negotiating with the carriages blocking the road in front, asking them to quickly move to the sides. The carriages and pedestrians were squeezed together. Everywhere, there were pedestrians shouting and crying. It was so noisy that it gave people a headache. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Get out of the way! The Long family guard leading the group held a whip and rode his horse to Emolien and Arbor's side. Then he was startled. He saw the symbol of a Black Clan dragon on the carriage's emblem. The Long family guard leader was so frightened that he almost rolled off his horse. This was the Emo royal family's emblem. This kind of emblem, other than the emperor, only the crown prince could be used as a symbol of identity. He didn't dare to be rash. He quickly flipped off his horse and rushed forward to pay his respects. Greetings, greetings to your highness. The Long family is so imposing, Emolien coldly said. The entire street in the South City is owned by your Long family. No, it's a misunderstanding. The Long family's guard leader hurriedly shook his head and said with a smile, It's this commoner and the other's fault. It's just that there were too many goods this time, which was why we were in the way. Don't worry, your highness. I'll move the carriage over. The Long family's guard didn't dare to ask the crown prince's carriage to let them pass. He yelled at the guards behind him, telling them to quickly turn the carriage around and make way for the crown prince's carriage. Arbor looked coldly at this person's behavior and suddenly said, Open the carriage. The guard leader couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before quickly shaking his head. No, crown princess, these dozen carriages of goods are extremely important. They're all seafood and can't be exposed to the light. They've all been sealed by the water spirit master's barrier. Once it's opened, it'll leak. Then I'll give it to the guests. That way it won't be too fresh. Seafood? Arbor's eyes coldly stared at the people in front of her. She waved her hand and said, Open it. A group of purple forest guards immediately rushed forward, unsheathing the swords at their waists and slashing down at the carriage. Bang! Crack! The carriage was split into two halves. The pieces fell to the ground. Large amounts of clear water gushed out of the carriage and rushed towards the crowd. Caught off guard, everyone revealed a dumbfounded expression one after another. Chapter 3697. The people who were implicated all wiped their faces and wiped away the water droplets in their eyes and ears before spitting out several mouthfuls of saliva in succession. Mama, are these the legendary merfolk? A child's clear and melodious voice came from the side, and it carried a trace of curiosity as it rushed into Arbor's ears. This voice made Arbor return to her senses. At this time, Emolien had already moved to her side and grasped her small hand. She asked with a somewhat anxious expression, Jojo, what's wrong? Arbor shook her head, and her icy gaze landed on the ground in front of her. 3 young women were washed out of the carriage along with the large amount of clear water. To be precise, it should be 3 merfolk women. They wore simple chest wraps on their upper bodies, but their lower bodies revealed fishtails that were covered in scars. At this moment, they were huddled together with ghastly pale faces, and their palm-sized pale faces clearly revealed traces of terror and nervousness. A ball of heat floated up in Arbor's chest and abdomen, burning like a raging flame. A wisp of nameless fire followed the little stoic's heart and lungs, and burned all the way to the top of her head. Angry at their incompetence, every time she saw these merfolk, they would always be abused to the point that even their parents wouldn't recognize them. They simply disappointed her to the core. Arbor didn't know where this disappointment in her heart came from. Right now, she only felt that her chest was choked by a ball of air. So choked that she wanted to go crazy. She wanted to slaughter people and beat up this bunch of weaklings in front of her. Get up! Get up! The little fellow struggled free of Emolien's hand and angrily pounced to one of the merfolk women's side. She grabbed her arm and pulled the curled-up person up. Get up! She flung her heavily, causing that trembling merfolk girl to crash heavily into another person behind her. I told you to get up, did you hear me? At this time, Arbor didn't care that her shoes were wet. She stepped on the water and walked up to that girl with a clatter. She glared at her and said, Stand up. Stand up by yourself. The 3 mermaids were simply scared silly by this fiendish little stoic, but they tactfully straightened their bodies while trembling. It was just that their lower bodies were fishtails, and at this moment, only their upper bodies were raised. However, their fishtails were very flexible and sturdy. Even if they were walking on flat ground, it was not much different from their legs. They swam very quickly, as if they were walking on flat ground. The little stoic threw out a sword from her inner world. With a clang, she threw it in front of a mermaid and shouted sternly, "Pick it up!" The three girls stared at her with wide, frightened eyes, and then looked at one another. "I told you to take it!" the little stoic roared angrily. In an instant, the entire southern city street, that was bustling with noise, instantly quieted down. "Kill him! Kill them!" Arbor pointed at one of the Long family disciples and shouted. It frightened the Long family disciples, who were originally standing to the side, into taking a few steps back one after another. One of the three mermaids instantly burst into tears. How would she dare to pick up the sword on the ground? She trembled and retreated 2 steps back. A trace of fury burst out of Arbor's eyes. He rushed up and stretched out his leg to kick that cowardly thing. But the sharp-eyed and nimble Emolien hugged him from behind. "Jojo, Jojo! Trash, trash!" Arbor shouted angrily. Chapter 3698. No one can save you. No one can save you. In his rage, Arbor kicked the broken carriage on the ground. "Look at what you've become. From your body to your soul, you're all weaklings, cowards." They didn't even have the courage to pick up their swords to fight back, let alone talk about the future. Emolien hurriedly reached out and pulled her over, gently patting her back as she said gently, "All right, Jojo, all right, don't be angry. Don't be angry, Jojo, be good." Emolien saw that she was very agitated, and hurriedly raised her hand to rub the back of her head, whispering, "Why are you angry with them?" Truly a bunch of mud that couldn't be helped up to the wall, making his Chow Chow so angry, simply hateful. Emolien looked up, and her cold gaze shot towards the people of the Long family. Seeing this, all the members of the Long family took a few steps back with a strong desire to survive. A hint of vigilance appeared on their faces. What a joke! If they were really remembered by this master, it wouldn't be a good thing. What happened? A cold rebuke came from behind the crowd. As the people around them squeezed to the sides, a small path was formed in the middle. The woman in the lead was dressed in a pea-green robe, and under her faint crescent-shaped eyebrows, her smile was quite sweet. Arbor glanced over, and immediately recognized that this was the Long family's eldest young Miss, Long Min, who had gone through the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm with them. When Long Min saw Xiao Mu, he was also slightly startled. Afterwards, he walked up with a smile and cupped his fists in greeting, saying, "Your Highness the Crown Prince Consort, apologies. Did some insensible juniors in the clan disturb you too?" These words were said with a hint of flattery. After all, Long Min had seen Arbor's cultivation on the way here. If it wasn't necessary, she really didn't want to be enemies with this group of people. Going against the royal family was already a very unwise move. "Sister, why are you so polite to them?" A rude roar came from behind Long Min. Long Min turned her head to look, and her brows could not help but furrow slightly. She saw her younger brother Long Chong, with more than a dozen manservants, roaring as they ran over. Without saying a word, they put on an appearance of wanting to fight. "What are you doing?" Long Min shouted angrily, a trace of annoyance in her eyes. This younger brother of hers was usually spoiled by his mother, until he was out of control. He didn't have any other skills, but his ability to cause trouble was top-notch. They dared to be so rude to the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Did they really think that the Long family could do whatever they wanted in Dragonflame City? After all, the two people in front of him were at the top of the Divine Prefecture. Putting aside their own strength, just the elite forces under them were not something that a mere Long family could resist. Long Chong glared at Xiao Mu indignantly with his bull-like eyes as he hooted. "The Crown Prince Consort can't be so unreasonable, right? What kind of logic is that to casually split open someone's carriage and check their goods?" "Goods?" Arbor's gaze instantly sharpened, and like an arrowhead, he shot unwaveringly at Long Chong opposite him. When Long Chong saw this, he reflexively took a step back. When he realized this almost reflexive action of his entire face suddenly flushed red. He actually retreated in fright from the little stoic's gaze? This was truly an extremely cowardly action. Chapter 3699. But at this moment, no one knew how much fear Long Chong was feeling. He even felt a faint pain as he dragged one of his legs. He remembered that at the palace banquet, it was the little crown princess who ordered a golem to drag him out of the banquet and beat him up. It was her. It was this despicable woman who ordered the golem to break one of his legs. Therefore, even today, Long Chong still felt a faint pain in the leg that he had once injured. Even Long Chong vaguely realized that from the moment he saw the little crown princess, this left leg that had been torn off by the golem began to hurt unbearably. Long Chong was very clear that this was a physical defect that was reflected in a psychological illness. It was a reflexive feeling of fear. Although he hated this feeling, there was nothing he could do about it. Long Chong roared fiercely. "Did I say something wrong?" Arbor turned his face and glanced at him indifferently. Long Chong shouted angrily. "All Long family members, listen to my orders and bring the carriage back to the Long family." Emolien said indifferently. "Open the other carriages." As soon as he said that, countless figures emerged from the crowd and quickly surrounded the carriage. Along with a series of pung pung and pa chi sounds suddenly sounded. The remaining dozen or so carriages were all split open by the purple forest guards. The crowd moved back noisily to make way for him. But a lot of clear water gushed out of the carriage, and 30 to 40 mermen rolled out of the carriage along with the water. Arbor glanced at them and saw that most of these mermen were young women, and there were a few elderly and children. The wounds on the young merman's body were even more messy, and it was obvious that he had suffered even more severe abuse. Among these mermen, some had lacerations on their tails, and some had half of their tails broken. All of them appeared to be in a sorry state, and their faces were extremely pale. Now that they were suddenly able to see the light again, it was obvious that they were somewhat panic-stricken. Long Min looked at this scene with an unsightly expression, and she turned to say to Emolien, "Isn't His Highness the Crown Prince being too overbearing by doing this?" These mermen were indeed captured by them from the coast. Since they were the prey that they had caught, they should belong to the Long family. Now that the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess had interfered, it was naturally overboard. "Although the Long family is weak, we can't allow your highness to bully us like this. This is the prey that the Long family obtained. It makes sense no matter what you say." Long Min said coldly and bowed in the direction of the imperial city. "Even if we meet the emperor in the Golden Palace, tie her up." Yes. At the young Crown Prince Consort's order, the purple forest guards immediately surged forward without any hesitation. 2 purple forest guards jumped in front of Long Chong's arms behind her back. 2 long swords were placed on the neck of the clamoring Long Chong. Long Min's expression changed abruptly. She struggled against her arms and shouted, "The laws of the 3 states don't explicitly state that we can't hunt mermen." "Slap her mouth." The young Crown Prince Consort interrupted Long Min's words with a stern shout. Without another word, a purple forest guard stepped forward and slapped Long Min's left cheek. Chapter 3700. Long Min was immediately slapped to the face, and a series of illusionary booms sounded in her ears. It was obvious how fast and ruthless this slap was. "Sister!" Long Chong had a long sword pressed against his neck, and he shouted angrily, "Is there any law in Dragon Flame City? Can you dispose of human lives at will just because you hold a position of power? Human lives?" Arbor could not help but snort coldly. He struggled free from Emolien's embrace and pounced forward to kick Long Chong in the chest. He kicked twice fiercely and roared angrily, "Do you have any law in your eyes? Human lives? You little beast, you have no ruler, no family, and no country. If you did, would you capture your own family members? Would you do this to them?" Arbor scolded angrily as he went berserk and kicked Long Chong in the chest 17 to 18 times. He kicked Long Chong until he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Long Chong!" Long Min's expression changed as she roared angrily. At this moment, the crowd of onlookers could not help but mutter softly, "So the Long family is really a branch of the merfolk race? I really didn't expect them to be so vicious. They actually captured their own family members. I heard that the little crown princess's mother, Long Chuyan, is a member of the Long family in the Sea of Forgetfulness. The Long family is the royal bloodline of the merfolk. In the Sea of Forgetfulness, Long is a common surname. All mermaids and mermen are subjects of the royal bloodline. TSK, I didn't expect this branch family to be so vicious. They can even do this to the people of their own family. That's right. Listen to what they said. It's as if these merfolk are goods that can be slaughtered and eaten at will. No wonder the little crown princess is so angry. Bah! Those who can treat their own family members like this are really not good people. Crown princess! Long Min twisted her arms that were held behind her back and shouted angrily. Don't go too far, crown princess! Our aristocratic families, and the royal family have always minded our own business. Don't even think about provoking a dispute between us. The fact that the Long family brought so many mermen into the capital is a malicious act. Emolian coldly interrupted Long Min's words. She raised her hand and said calmly, Now you're even slandering the crown princess. That's an even bigger crime. Men, capture everyone from the Long family. This crown prince wants to have a good chat with the Long family's head. How did he teach his children to be so disrespectful to the crown princess? Long Min's entire body quivered, and she hurriedly lowered her head in submission. She said in a small voice. Long Min's words were too extreme. But I asked Crown Prince to see that Long Min is anxious for her younger brother, that's why. Your Highness, the Long family has no ill intentions. These mermen were actually captured by Patriarch Lin and my father. Mermen have mermaid pearls in their bodies, Your Highness. As long as we get the pearls, we will definitely offer them to His Majesty. We definitely won't dare to keep them for ourselves. Xiaomu's two small fists tightly clenched together, and her large eyes brimming with hatred and fury glared in Long Min's direction with her pitch-black, round eyes. Bastard! Jojo! Emolian suddenly moved to the little fellow's side, and hurriedly reached out to pull her into his embrace. He lowered his head with a frown. His slender fingers pried open her tightly curled little hands, and stroked the red marks that her fingernails had left on her palm. Chapter 3701. Jojo, don't hurt yourself because of some dead people. Emolian looked down at her in displeasure. If you're this angry, I'll give the order to exterminate the Long family. It's not worth making you this angry over such a small matter. Sir Jojo only felt an unbearable stuffiness in his chest. At the same time, his chest seemed to be burning hot, making his blood boil. Not every mermaid has a mermaid pearl. Hundreds of thousands of mermaids might not even have a single mermaid pearl. I know. Emolian looked down at the little girl whose eyes were red, and said helplessly in a low voice. But not everyone is as smart as my Jojo. There are so many idiots in this world. Aren't they all used to set off my Jojo's incomparable intelligence? Sir Jojo blinked his large eyes and sniffed his little nose. He punched him neither lightly nor heavily. I'm so angry. Angry that these mermaids were tortured so miserably each time. She had already handed them knives and given them a chance, but they didn't dare to retaliate. All right. My Jojo, what's there to be angry about? Emolian turned to look in Long Min's direction, and his eyes, which were as gentle as spring, gradually faded away. A cold voice sounded faintly. Just make them disappear. Long Min seemed to understand something. Looking at the Crown Prince's eyes, his entire body trembled. Pass down this Crown Prince's order. The Long family brought a large group of outsiders into the capital without permission. They didn't obtain the Emperor's permission, and didn't go through any formalities. They hid it from the capital magistrate, and conspired against the law. In order to prevent them from being deceitful, all of them are now in prison, and under strict supervision. Order the Ministry of Justice and the capital magistrate to investigate this case. We must investigate the truth. Yes. A large group of Purple Forest guards rushed over from all directions. Hundreds of longswords and thousands of longswords surrounded the Long family members present. How could the Long family resist when they saw the large group of people surrounding them? They raised their hands in surrender, and looked at the surrounding soldiers with pale faces. Where are these people? Emolian nodded, and pointed in the direction of the mermen. The little crown princess had a stoic expression on her face as she said in a fit of pique, "I don't want to care." The crown prince didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With his intelligence, he knew that his wife was just angry at the moment. If he really didn't care about these people, and casually drove them out of the city to fend for themselves, his wife would definitely regret it later. He hugged his wife with a smile and said softly, "Then I'll put them in a nearby mansion for the time being. When you're in a good mood, you can go and see them. How about that?" "No. Okay, I won't see you." Emolien lowered his head and nuzzled her small head as he grumbled, "A bunch of weaklings. They didn't even bleed much after being slaughtered, and they even dirted Xiao's small hands. Just let them fend for themselves in the resort." The little fellow puffed up her cheeks and turned her little face away in a huff. Emolien turned her head and looked in the direction of the mermen. She waved her hand and said to Xiaoyi, who was bouncing over, "There's a small villa nearby. You know where it is. Arrange for them to stay there first." "Okay, Your Highness." Arbor was still huffing and puffing, but she didn't turn to look at the mermen. Suddenly, she felt a slight chill on her leg. When she looked down, she saw a little merman about 3 or 4 years old, who couldn't even swim steadily, hugging her leg. Chapter 3702. An old woman hurriedly swam forward and crossed her arms in front of her chest. She said respectfully and fearfully, "Esteemed Crown Princess of the Divine Prefecture, please forgive my grandson's rudeness. It's because you are filled with a fascinating water spirit power." The mermaid stammered as she explained. There was also a mysterious power that made mere people feel comfortable when they got close. The old woman did not dare to continue. She only looked respectfully at Arbor and sincerely lowered her head. Mermaids and mermen were proud by nature. Normally, they wouldn't even look at the humans on the land. They had always been peace-loving and would not intentionally play with weapons. Except for the elite troops specially trained by the royal family, the other mermaids and mermen could be said to be powerless. They did not have much combat strength, but they had their own pride. Even when they were captured by the Long family, none of them would lower their noble heads. But now, the old mermaid willingly lowered her head in front of this esteemed crown princess, whose name she could not name. She had a strange feeling. It seemed to be an instinct that made her submit to this crown princess in front of her. The 3 or 4-year-old little merman was wrapped around Arbor's leg. He suddenly raised his head and smiled at her, showing his teeth. Her 2 small canine teeth were very cute. Although her small round face was full of dirt, and her cheeks were thin due to hunger, her eyes were very bright. So bright that it almost made the sky lose its color. The fury in Xiao Mu's heart inexplicably faded away by quite a bit. She took out a handful of peanuts from her pocket and stuffed them into the little brat hugging her leg. She turned around with a cold expression. Prince Mo's eyes lit up. He hurriedly waved his hand at Xiaoyi and had them send the mermaid back to the villa. He held his wife's hand and boarded the carriage together. As the purple forest guards maintained order and separated the pedestrians, the carriage finally moved again and headed toward the city gate. Arbor turned and looked out the window. Under the urging of the purple forest guard, 30 to 40 mermen moved and swam in the direction of the southern courtyard. Although their fishtails were tough, they were still injured. When they rubbed against the uneven ground, they would occasionally leave a trace of blood. Arbor retracted his gaze and frowned. He pretended to be careless and muttered, "I don't even know if the small villa can fit so many people." Emolien pursed his lips and suppressed the mirth in his voice as he said softly, "I bought that courtyard in the past. It's quite big, and it's a courtyard that lives by the water. There's half a lake in the back, so it can accommodate quite a few people." The little fellow pursed his lips and rolled his big eyes. Then he mumbled softly, "Why didn't I know?" Emolien really couldn't help but want to laugh. She hurriedly reached out and hugged this funny and awkward baby into her arms. She pressed her little head against hers and laughed in a deep voice. "You can't blame me for that. When the 2 of us were on Seacombe Planet, I already gave you the title deeds to all the properties under my name for safekeeping." The little fellow humphed awkwardly and didn't say anything else. Emolien couldn't help but lower her head and kiss her a few times. She said with a smile, "Why are you so funny? You're the funny one." Your whole family is funny. Humph. Chapter 3703. The little stoic glared at him before retracting her gaze and immediately changing the topic. How much longer until we arrive? We'll arrive in 15 minutes after leaving the city, Emolien replied with a smile. Jojo. Arbor suddenly covered his mouth and pointed at the roof of the carriage, indicating for him to listen. Emolien was startled, and within seconds, he heard a rather loud flapping of wings. He pulled down the curtain next to him and saw a machine-operated bird fly in from outside. It flapped its wings a few times before folding them up. The bird's face was wooden as it crouched on the tea tray placed on the side. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. They both recognized that this was the machine-operated bird that the Academy used to transmit messages. Hello, Student Emolien, Student Arbor. That messenger bird's mouth opened and closed, and Headmaster Yun's voice was transmitted from it. In view of the fact that you've been wandering outside for a long time, this headmaster needs to remind you. This year's Heavenly Yuan ranking competition is about to begin. The preliminaries are set to begin on the 18th of this month. The preliminaries will last for 10 days. The preliminaries' content will be announced on the day of the preliminaries. In order to prevent you two from missing the competition, this headmaster's divine foresight has deduced your location and various, after a string of nonsense. Arbor looked at the frowning Emolien and pursed his lips. He had already decided to punch this noisy machine-operated bird out the window. This Yun Piamiao finally entered his main topic. The Royal Academy has given everyone a time limit of 3 days. You two must immediately return to the Academy within 3 days. Otherwise, your names will be removed. In addition, Emolien, Duan Yu Mingyasi, and some other people's contribution points are already in the negatives. Arbor, your contribution points are almost reaching 0. The Royal Academy's rule is that people with 0 contribution points must go to the Great Forest alone and stay there for a month. Of course, people with negative contribution points must scram even more. Headmaster Yun's roar came from that machine-operated bird's stomach. The little stoic and Prince Emo silently looked at each other again, and both pursed their lips. As the dean, was it really okay for him to be so agitated? Dean Yun calmed his breathing and said in a deep voice, 3 days. I want to see all of you back in 3 days. The Academy hasn't been very peaceful recently. You should know what's going on. My ethereal peak has welcomed 3 waves of people blessed by the heavens. It's all because of you too. Immediately, return within 3 days. The mechanical bird stopped abruptly. Sir Jojo exchanged glances with Prince Emo and snorted disdainfully. How immoral. Wasn't it just because he attracted some enemies? Wasn't it because he was strong enough? If they were ordinary people, Jojo wouldn't have bothered to cause trouble for them. If Principal Yun could hear Jojo's thoughts at this moment, he would definitely spit on her face and say to her, thank your ancestors for 18 generations. I reckon that the Academy isn't too peaceful these days. Emolien coughed lightly and said, otherwise the principal wouldn't be so agitated. Forget it. Since the Heavenly Yuan ranking competition is about to start, let's set off the day after tomorrow. Arbor rolled his eyes. The day after tomorrow? Jojo has a transportation talisman matrix. We can make it in time. Emolien nodded with a grin. We can also make a trip back to the sect on the way. After returning to the Academy, we'll be separated from Jojo. Emolien hugged her pitifully. Chapter 3704. We've only been married for 2 days, so let hubby spend more time with Jojo. You. The little crown princess's face inexplicably flushed red, and she punched him hard. Scram. I did scram. Emolien blinked and said with a grin, didn't I scram here? Arbor couldn't resist chuckling and rolled his eyes at him in exasperation. The carriage rocked to a stop. Emolien lifted the curtain and pulled Arbor out of the carriage before walking toward the court ahead. This court in the suburbs appeared to be unguarded, but in reality, there were hidden guards everywhere. There were no obstructions on the way in, and there was no one at all. The two had just stepped into the courtyard when they heard a displeased voice with a smile. Dawdling, did the journey take this long? Look how long I've been waiting for you two. Xiaomu looked over and saw a man in plain clothes sitting under a camphor tree in the atrium, his posture slender and graceful. He held a cup in one hand as he gazed at them with a beaming smile. Ripples rippled in his peach blossom eyes. Prince Emo immediately blocked his wife's line of sight. Sir Jojo poked his head out from behind him and continued to glance at Duanyu, who was in the courtyard. What's there to see? Naturally, it's because I'm good-looking. Duanyu appeared in front of them in a flash and ran to Arbor's side. Jojo, long time no see. Shouldn't you give me a hug first? Hug my ass. Emolien brusquely yanked this guy aside and pulled him toward the dungeon. You caught him? Humph. Duanyu pridefully brushed aside his hand. Why are you pulling me? My hand is only for Jojo to pull. Bah! Emolien glared at him, annoyed and amused at the same time. She poked him with her finger and said, Let's go. Mr. Jojo tilted his head and stared at the two men who were messing around in front of him. Suddenly he shouted, What are you doing? The two of them reflexively distanced themselves and simultaneously turned to look at the expressionless little stoic. Jojo, I've set a trap in the dark and captured that peak immortal venerable. We used up a lot of godstone cannons. Duanyu's figure flashed, and he arrived in front of Arbor. He said with a grin, I'll take you to take a look. Emolien hurried over and pulled Jojo to her side. I was the one who provided the godstone cannons. Xiaomu walked down the dungeon. Rongli was previously imprisoned here by you? Both of them nodded at the same time. Then where is he now? Duanyu pointed here and there, pointing to the sky, and then to the ground. They're everywhere. Mr. Jojo rolled his eyes exasperatedly. It meant that he was burned to ashes and blended into the air. Then since Rongli is dead, why did you capture that peak immortal venerable for? Rongli thought we would fall for his lies. Duanyu chuckled. If venerable immortal Jinshang and those two spiritual venerables didn't receive enough benefits, how could they be willing to sell their lives for a mere Rongli? So, Arbor narrowed his eyes. They also know that you possess the spirit domain. The two of them said tacitly before glaring at each other. As long as we dispose of these three people, this matter will be considered over, Duanyu said with a smile. As they spoke, they had already arrived in front of the wooden fence cages imprisoning venerable immortal Jinshang and those two spiritual venerables. Chapter 3705. Inside this cage, the person whose hands and feet were shackled was a middle-aged man with disheveled hair. Seeing the three people approaching, that man fiercely struggled against the iron cuffs on his hands and hissed, Despicable and shameless people! This venerable immortal really didn't expect that a transcendent god realm could be so shameless. These two transcendent god realm cultivators didn't play by the rules at all. First, they put on a hypocritical face and pretended to be friendly with them, even treating them as honored guests. Then, they poisoned them and used godly cannons to deal with them, mobilizing thousands of people to encircle and annihilate the three of them. Merely the experts at the Godrank realm numbered over 1,000, let alone those spirit realm cultivators that covered the heavens and the earth like ants. As the saying went, even ants could freaking bite an elephant to death. It was precisely these three who were unlucky. This venerable immortal Jinshang originally planned to use this opportunity to carry out Plan B and secretly kidnap the little girl. But who knew humans were truly shameless and two-faced people? Sir Jojo's small face was taut as he looked at the middle-aged man, who was roaring thunderously inside. What did you two do to anger him to this extent? Do you still need to ask? A light voice landed next to Arbor. The venerable peach blossom immortal and little Taisui popped out of the star domain again and looked with amusement at the middle-aged man, who suddenly looked up and glared at them. These two fellows are so wicked. They clearly knew that this person was secretly plotting to capture you. But they didn't do anything, and even courteously invited them to eat, drink, and stay in the best residence. The venerable peach blossom immortal quickly pulled Sir Jojo's small hand to his side and said earnestly, Jojo, you can't win against these two-faced fellows. Remember not to get too close to them in the future. They really were too wicked. Emolien quickly pulled his wife back, his phoenix eyes dangerously sweeping a certain venerable immortal who was slandering them. Shut up. Hey Jojo, look. I hit the nail on the head with this person's wicked intentions, so he's flying into a rage out of humiliation. Emolian hastily hugged her wifey's waist and immediately declared, "This idea was all Duan Yu's idea." This wasn't the first time he had betrayed his brother. Duan Yu angrily glared back. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help but laugh. At this time, the middle-aged man who was detained in the cage shook the chains desperately, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. The little girl really has a spirit domain. When the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and little Taisui came out, they did not avoid these three people. The other two late-stage spiritual supremacy realm cultivators, who were being held in solitary confinement, also looked sharply at the little stoic. So what if there is? In any case, it has nothing to do with you. Arbor glared at venerable immortal Jinshang and rolled his eyes. It hasn't been easy for the three of you to cultivate to this point. Do you want to die or submit? Make your choice. Venerable immortal Jinshang's eyes flashed with anger. You want us to submit to you? Damn girl, you splat. A pitch-black whip of light flashed into the cage and landed on venerable immortal Jinshang's body like a bolt of lightning. Venerable immortal Jinshang bellowed in pain, especially the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and little Taisui. Weren't the two of them looking down on Duan Yu? Let me out if you have the guts. Despicable methods after a real fight. Why were they rolling their eyes at the same time now? Sure enough, completely disagreeing, the other fellows behind him were rolling their eyes of fighting as if they were cut from the same cloth. Shameless synchronized expressions. To think that you're all transcendent realm experts. You actually did such a despicable and shameless thing. If we were in the holy domain, I would definitely teach you a lesson. All is fair in war. Duan Yu aloofly interrupted venerable immortal Jinshang's clamor. That Rongli was very funny, actually deceiving him. How many people did he tell about the spirit domain? Wouldn't everything be revealed after a soul search? Truly a naive person. Since they knew that Jinshang and the other two late-stage spiritual venerable realm experts knew about the portable spirit domain, then they naturally had to control them as quickly as possible. Therefore, the best way was to bide his time and treat him as an honored guest. It was also because venerable immortal Jinshang and the other two fellows were too careless. Moreover, they saw that Duan Yu and Emolian's cultivation levels weren't low, so they didn't dare to fall out with them on the spot. Hence, they wanted to secretly play dirty tricks. Who knew? Let the three of us go. We'll fight. So annoying. Little Taisui impatiently interrupted venerable immortal Jinshang. Hurry and hand over a strand of your soul. If they wanted to control a transcendent realm expert, they could only make them hand over a strand of their soul. There was no other way. However, this was also a very damaging method to their pride. When venerable immortal Jinshang and the other two late-stage spiritual venerable realm experts heard this, they instantly trembled in anger, their eyes bulging. Don't even think about it. Arbor turned around and disdainfully said, Then kill them. So annoying. She also didn't want several inconsiderate subordinates by her side. She also had to guard against any tricks they might play in the future. The four men looked at each other. Bewildered, the little girl was truly aloof enough. These were three transcendent realm experts, and they were finally captured alive. Didn't she feel reluctant to kill them just like that? What's the use? Arbor said coldly. You're not on my side, and you want to capture me, take my spirit realm, and keep me for the new year? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal nodded. Jojo is right. Let's kill him. Then he turned and ran in the direction of Arbor, waving his hand. I'll leave it to you. Emolian and Duan Yu looked at each other before raising their hands at the same time. The two spiritual supremacies in the cage hurriedly cried out. No, don't. Don't kill me. At this moment they were really panicking. It was really not easy to cultivate to this level. But now he was going to lose his life for no reason. Since that was the case, he might as well submit. I'm willing to give you a wisp of my soul, the two spiritual venerables said hurriedly. You guys! Venerable immortal Jinshang suddenly turned his head to look at his companions in the cage. As his hands moved, the sound of chains being pulled could be heard. Little Taisui quickly turned around and called out. Last, these two fellows agreed. Sir Jojo pattered back and pinched little Taisui's small face in passing. Why are you pretending to be old? Every time she saw this 8 or 9-year-old boy call her lass, with a sullen face, she had the urge to beat him up. Little Tai Sui puffed up his bun face and looked at this rebellious little thing in displeasure. Chapter 3707. The little stoic took out an oath from her pocket and tossed it in front of the two. Sign this oath too while you're at it. Although soul remembrance was important, with the heavenly Tao oath's binding power, Sir Jojo would be more at ease with this double guarantee. After all, they weren't on their side, so they had to be on guard. Zhao Sheng Liang Yi, you really want to submit to someone? Venerable Immortal Jinshang looked at his two companions in astonishment. Back then, when they came down from the holy region, they were so high-spirited. They didn't expect to suffer such a huge setback when they returned to the tiny divine continent. The two spiritual supremacies were extremely intelligent people. Since they had already made up their minds, they wouldn't hesitate at all. They took the oath and pen with one hand and signed it. At least there was still hope if they were alive, but there was nothing if they were dead. Venerable Immortal Jinshang was silent for a while before lowering his head dejectedly. His head drooped almost to his chest, and he appeared extremely dejected. Arbor glanced at him through the wooden fence, and then waved his hand, letting the two spiritual supremacies out. He knew her biggest secret, yet he couldn't submit to her. There was no helping it. Every man for himself. Before she was completely strong, she couldn't take any risks. Kindness couldn't save the world. Deal with them. Mo Lian held his wife's small hand and turned to walk out. Venerable Immortal Jinshang suddenly looked up with a struggling and exhausted expression. He nodded slowly and heavily. I'm willing to submit. The young couple narrowed their eyes at the same time and glanced sideways at the figures behind the fence. After Venerable Immortal Jinshang, Zhao Sheng, and Liang Yi left the cage with Arbor's group, they went to the courtyard's living room and sat down. Arbor glanced at the three people and asked, Now, can you tell me what you originally wanted to do when you came to the divine continent from the holy region? Venerable Immortal Jinshang's expression was slightly bitter, and he said with a wry smile, To tell you the truth, some time ago, someone spread the news that there's a mineral vein in the divine continent. We all came for this. So other than the three of you, there are actually other transcendent realm experts here. Honored Immortal Jinshang and the other two nodded. Yes. What about these people? They are not on the same side as us. We are all moving separately and will not interfere with each other. Venerable Immortal Jinshang said, Because of the existence of the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, our strength has been suppressed quite a bit. Jinshang Venerable Immortal suddenly lifted his head and looked at Mo Lian, the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, and the others in confusion. How did all of you? The cultivation of these four people should be above the celestial venerable realm. Jinshang even felt that with his current cultivation, he couldn't tell how strong two of the young men were. This made him feel a little shocked, and his mind was also in a whirl. As a transcendent god, he was not restricted by the heavenly Tao. This kind of thing was really unbelievable. But the truth was right in front of his eyes, and he had no choice but to admit it. It seemed that these young men were all very strange. It was not an injustice for the three of them to fall into their hands. Thinking of this, Jinshang could not help but sigh. He turned to look at Mo Lian and said with a wry smile, That's all we know. The news of the holy bloodline is very tempting to every transcendent god. You should know that. Chapter 3708. Mo Lian nodded and took out a holy stone from her inner world, tossing it in front of the trio. The divine province does indeed have a holy meridian. However, you won't be able to find it at the moment. This holy meridian had completely collapsed following the earth's tremors. In that case, he still couldn't let Huifeng lead his men to mine. At least, he absolutely couldn't do so before he had enough assurance. Otherwise, if he attracted the attention of those transcendent realm cultivators scattered all over the divine province, Huifeng's group wouldn't be enough to be slaughtered by them despite their numbers. Supremacy Immortal Jinshang and the others' eyes lit up as they landed on that holy stone. They subconsciously reached out to touch that bone-chilling stone. Take this stone to absorb and recover first. Set off with us the day after tomorrow for the Royal Academy. Previously, in order to trick them, Prince Mo had used all sorts of methods to deal with them. Since the three of them were considered his people now, he naturally wouldn't treat them unfairly. Supremacy Immortal Jinshang was startled, and delight naturally surfaced in his eyes. This holy stone was palm-sized. After absorbing it, not only could it heal his injuries, but it could also advance his cultivation. It truly was a rare item. After this matter was settled, the young couple bid farewell to Duan Yu. When they returned to the city, Arbor and Emolien went to the south of the city to settle down the group of mermen. Those miserable mermen had all been settled down at this time, and were currently recuperating. Arbor found them, and a slightly older merman came forward, and exchanged a few words. He learned that these mermen were captured by the Long family, in a small coastal town. It was also because the environment of the River of Forgetfulness had worsened in recent years, that a portion of mermen secretly went ashore, and built a small village to rest in. As time passed, some small villages actually became small bases for mermen and humans to trade. And the coastal town that these mermen stayed in was such a situation. 10 days ago, those Long family members barged into our town, and captured all the mermen. They indulged in the wildest fantasy, believing that a miracle like the merman pearl exists in our bodies. The old mermaid's tone contained a trace of fury when she spoke. These people didn't give us any chance to explain. They just escorted us to the capital. No matter how we explain, they won't listen to us. Crown Princess, is your mother really the first miss of our merfolk race's royal bloodline Long Qian? Arbor didn't answer the old mermaid's question. He just looked at her and said, "What do you plan to do now?" The old woman looked at her awkwardly. "I hope you don't blame those young ladies. It's not that they're weak. It's just that they don't know how to fight with others. Our merfolk race has always been a peace-loving race. We have never been good at fighting with others." Arbor looked at her coldly. When someone puts a knife to your neck, do you just obediently close your eyes? Arbor stood up and said indifferently. "If you want to leave and go to a safe sea, you can inform the guards and I will let them escort you there. This is the greatest help I can think of right now." The old mermaid opened her mouth, and looked at the back of the young crown princess coldly as she left. For a moment she felt a sense of loss. Chapter 3709. The Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince left for the academy early this morning. Upon receiving this news, Mu Jingxing of the Mu family's second branch was rather excited. Wouldn't the matter of the family head be left unsettled? The person in question had already returned to the academy, and who knew how many months it would be before she returned. Since that was the case, the Mu family couldn't be without a family head. The old man was bound to nominate another person to temporarily take over the family's affairs. And the person to take over the family's affairs would definitely be him, Mu Jingxing. Mu Jingxing was the one who knew the most about the family's affairs. The eldest son, Mu Jingfeng, was now in a half-dead state, and he was the only one who could continue to contribute in the family. However, it didn't take long for old Master Mu's order to come down. Before the new family head, Arbor, returned home, the third son Mu Jingyuan was ordered to temporarily take over the family's affairs, and the elders would assist him from the side. When Mu Jingxing heard this news, he was so angry that he smashed his own study into smithereens. The entire second branch was shrouded in an oppressive atmosphere for several days. Of course, Arbor didn't know that old Master Mu insisted on leaving him such a big mess to take over. She used the transportation array to teleport several times, and then flew back to Red Cloud's Peak with Emolien on the Golden Dragon. At the same time, Yu Xiu led a group of purple forest guards, holding the Crown Prince's order, and surrounded the Long family from top to bottom. However, when they kicked open the Long family's door and entered, they found that the entire Long family was empty. It was as if they suddenly and mysteriously disappeared. From top to bottom, not even a single servant was left. That night, a group of mysterious deity realm cultivators entered the prison of Long Yin City's Ministry of Justice and rescued the two brothers, Long Min and Long Chong from the prison. When the Crown Prince received this news, he was already in the Imperial Academy. He didn't care too much. The 3 continents were only so big, and the Long family that disappeared had to find a place to stay. The Divine Continent could no longer accommodate them. Song Province, Ming Province, could there be a place for them to hide? Eldest senior sister is back. Eldest senior sister is back. Little Canon Fong Su's voice reverberated throughout the entire Red Cloud's peak. A crowd of holy water sex sisters clustered around their excited second Amp Master, Yang Shirong, and ran out. The large group of people surrounded Su Shanshan and Arbor in the center. After a period of recuperation and cultivation, Su Shanshan's complexion had improved a lot. That day, after using the soul-gathering bell to retrieve eldest senior sister's soul, Arbor tried to use a secret method to help eldest senior sister directly reach the God realm when he was nursing her body. However, it was a pity that she was still half a step behind. Now, eldest senior sister had comprehended 80% of the spiritual water power, but she was still stuck at the half-step divine realm. After using the secret technique, eldest senior sister did not need to go through the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation anymore. In other words, as long as she stayed at the Holy Water sect at Rosy Cloud's peak and carefully entered seclusion for a year, she would definitely be able to naturally break through the threshold of the deity realm one day. Arbor exchanged a few words with his senior and junior sisters and left behind mini pills to raise their cultivation. Afterwards, he rushed back to the Imperial Academy with Emolian. Chapter 37:10. When the 2 of them arrived at the entrance of Wind Thunder City, they found a secluded place and released Master Immortal Jinshang and the 2 spiritual paragons from the storage talisman. They let the 3 of them, and Emolian, set up a defensive barrier to block the aura of the opening of the spirit region. Arbor then summoned Qi Xianxian, Duan Muqing, and the rest of the 7 of them out of the star region. After a long period of closed-door training, using the spirit breakthrough pill to raise her realm, and taking a medicinal bath to stabilize her body, Qi Xuanxuan's cultivation had already broken through to the 10th level of the spiritual realm. Duan Muqing had entered the initial success stage of a level 15 spiritual master. Although his realm was higher than Arbor's, his actual battle strength was not much of a match. After all, Lady Jojo had a trump card in her hands. Even a transcending god stage would be defeated if they were not careful. Furthermore, Lady Jojo had never relied on medicine to raise her level. When she broke through, she did not even take the spirit breakthrough pill. Of course, this was also closely related to the sacred wood source, sacred water, and sacred earth in her body. She did not need to take any spirit breakthrough pill, and could easily break through the bottleneck of her realm. She never felt like she was stuck in the first half of a realm. When the 8 of them stepped into the Wind Thunder City, they saw a swarm of people running towards the Academy Street. Quick, quick! Place your bets in the last 3 minutes. Place your bets. Place your bets. Qi Xianxian grabbed an uncle who was running forward. Hey, uncle! What are you doing? Hey, little girl, did you just come to Wind Thunder City? The people from Tianhua Academy are here to challenge the Royal College again. Hihi, the daughter of Tianhua Academy's vice principal is really a beauty. The uncle revealed a mesmerized expression, causing Qi Xianxian to hurriedly retract her hand and throw him a few steps back. Do you want to go over and take a look? Let's go back to Misty Peak first and report to Principal Yin. Arbor rolled his eyes and said, otherwise he will deduct our contribution points for today. Yes, my contribution points are almost gone. Actually, when we went to the Sun Moon Mystery Realm this time, didn't we agree that our days would not be deducted? Why are you deducting our contribution points now? Maybe the dean's brain went haywire. Little Fatty concluded, and everyone looked at him. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Little Fatty couldn't help but smile foolishly at them. Isn't that the case? The group of people entered the inner city and asked Honored Immortal Jinshang and the other 2 to find a place to stay. The rest of them headed towards the Misty Peak. While they were still at the bottom of the floating peak, they heard Yun Piaomiao's voice faintly float down. Come up. Without a word, everyone rushed up to Ethereal Peak and saw the dean sitting alone in the courtyard, sipping tea in a relaxed manner. Seeing everyone enter, Yun Piaomiao stood up with a smile and said, "Everyone welcome home." The little fatty could not help but mutter softly, "This smiling fox, whoever believes him will be unlucky." Qi Xianxian represented her teammates and took a step forward. She placed her hand across her chest and bowed to Principal Yun. She immediately asked, "Principal, what's up with our contribution points? Why are they all deducted?" Yun Piaomiao held the teacup calmly and nodded at her. "It's very simple because you have been outside for too long. The academy will automatically take a portion of your contribution points and convert them into holidays." Chapter 37:11. So now, other than Arbor, all of you have negative contribution points, Yun Piaomiao said calmly as he sipped his tea. Logically speaking, you should immediately head to the Great Forest in the north-facing forest for a month of individual training, Headmaster Yun said calmly. However, in view of the fact that the Tianyuan ranking competition is starting in 7 to 8 days, this headmaster will make an exception and give you all a chance to turn over a new leaf. Headmaster Yun sipped his tea and said, "Recently, people from Tianhua Academy came to our school to cause trouble. You must have heard about this, right?" The little stoic, Mo Lian, Duan Muqing, and the others all shook their heads at the same time in tacit understanding, indicating that they were completely unaware of this matter. Headmaster Yun's expression stiffened. He coughed lightly and said, "You don't even know about such an important matter. People from Tianhua Academy set up an arena on Academy Street and challenged our Royal Academy's Divine Prefecture branch. Many students have already gone to accept the challenge. You guys, as outstanding students of our Royal Academy's Divine Prefecture branch, you should take the lead and set an example. This Tianhua Academy is an academy within the Underworld region. They came specifically to challenge your Divine Prefecture branch students. Headmaster, you summoned us back in such a hurry, because no one can stop the Huatian Academy from kicking down the door, right?" Xiao Mu interrupted him and voiced the suspicions in everyone's hearts. "Nonsense." Headmaster Yun coughed and stood up. He paced back and forth in front of them with his hands behind his back. "Our Royal Academy has produced many outstanding students. Who knows how many elite students there are among the seniors? How can we not handle the situation?" Everyone replied with an "Oh." "What oh?" Headmaster Yin turned around and glared at the little stoic and the others. "Hey, in any case, I won't let you fight in the arena competition with Tianhua Academy students for free. As long as you win a match, you'll receive 1,000 contribution points. If you participate in a team battle, you'll receive 5,000 contribution points. How about it? This headmaster is very kind to you, right?" The little fatty, Qi Xianxian, and the others said in unison. "This Tianhua Academy must be very troublesome for the headmaster." Little Noodles nodded his head in agreement. Based on his understanding of this stingy dean, it was impossible for him to be so generous. The reason why he was so generous must be because he had a request in mind. While Principal Yun was fuming with rage and glaring, he heard the little stoic say crisply, 2,000. 2,000 contribution points for every victory. 10,000 for group battles. I won't do it for less." Dean Yun really wanted to punch her in the face. "Why don't you just go and snatch it? Since we can't come to an agreement, then forget it." Arbor turned around and led his team members to leave. Dean Yun gritted his teeth. "We'll do as you say. Fuck, if not for the fact that the people from Tianhua Academy were all new students, he would not have had to stop the seniors from coming out to battle just to save his face. Also, how about we reduce the deduction of contribution points by half?" The little stoic shuffled next to Headmaster Yin and used her small elbow to nudge Yun Piaomiao's sleeve. "All of you scram." Dean Yun's roar reverberated down from Ethereal Peak and shook the entire inner city. The hearts of the students who were cultivating in the academy trembled for no reason. Chapter 37:13. Just thinking about it made him sad. They were just newlyweds, and he could no longer stick to his JoJo. Being forced to separate from one's spouse, that kind of feeling was really unbearable. Sir Jojo punched him on the head in annoyance. You're only separated during the day, but at night, you still have to return to Donglin Court together. Previously, she had thought that this guy was overthinking things. Emolian pursed his lips and grabbed her little hand that was hitting him. Jojo, you hit your husband, and your husband's heart hurts. Arbor was angry and amused at the same time. She reached out and pinched his cheeks, making him make a funny face. You're so annoying. No, if you find me annoying now, what will happen in the future? Emolian reached out and rubbed her little face as he nagged. Xiaomu couldn't resist snickering before bursting into laughter. Emolian supported his chin with one hand and looked at his little wife with a smile. How happy. I feel that this little girl's smile is gradually becoming more frequent. The next morning, when the sun had just risen, the long-awaited sound of a broken basin rang out again. Students, the morning is the golden time of the day. It's time to wake up and train. Students, it takes about an hour to travel from Donglin Court to the Academy District. It's time to wake up, time to wake up, time to wake up. Qi Xianxian wore a nightcap and wandered out of the room like a ghost. She stared blankly at the kitchen maid for a long while before she could not help but shout. There are no classes today. To be exact, there were no classes for the past few days. Since the dean had arranged for them to challenge, trample, Tianhua Academy, why would he be so stupid as to arrange classes for them to waste their time? The kitchen maid served up a big bowl of sumptuous food and continued to shout. No classes? That's great. Quickly finish your breakfast and go into seclusion to train. Could this kitchen maid be the dean's secret spy, lying in ambush here to supervise their training? Why did it feel like he was so excited in the morning? He was even more excited than students like them. Little Fatty yawned as he walked out of the room. He moved a stool and sat beside Qi Xianxian. Xianxian, we're going to the arena today. She was so sleepy. She didn't know if it was because of the change of environment, but she felt that she didn't sleep well last night. In the past, when he rested in the little stoic spirit domain, it was a small space of its own without any noise to disturb him. When he woke up, he would feel that his spirit energy was abundant. Yesterday, when he slept in the side room, he felt too tired. Outside, the sky was full of noise. Early in the morning, he was knocked awake by a broken basin. After washing up, they felt a little better. After eating breakfast, his soul finally returned to its original position. Duan Yu had already changed into a neat school uniform in his room. When he pushed open the door and walked out, he was met with the gazes of his little companions. I'll go with you guys to take a look today. There was nothing to do in the room anyway, so it would be great to go over and watch the fun. He walked to the courtyard and sat beside the little stoic and Emolian, eating breakfast with them. Little Fatty and his group all wore the same white school uniform, and each of them appeared to be in high spirits. The little stoic took out a large red cloak from her inner world and put it on. She raised her hand and shouted, "Let's go," taking the lead to walk out the door. Everyone. Jojo put on a large red combat cloak. Chapter 37:14. This was the prelude to causing trouble. The little friends stared at Sir Jojo's back as he left, and their eyes lit up. Their Jojo was going to battle. What were they waiting for? At the same time, on the ethereal peak, a circle of bare stones was formed, forming a small courtyard. Principal Yun was sipping tea with a satisfied expression on his face. He was enjoying the spiritual tea that he had dug out from the little stoic girl, when he suddenly looked up. He saw an old man with white hair and a long beard walking towards him with a smile on his face. Elder Ku, what brings you here for a chat today? Principal Yin raised his hand and invited the old man to sit down. Elder Ku stroked his beard and said with a smile, I have a lot of free time every day, and there hasn't been much going on in the cultivation hall recently. Most of the matters are taken care of by the teachers, and there is no need for me to step in. On the other hand, Dean, shouldn't you be very anxious? Why do you look so calm and collected? Why has the matter with the Tianhua Academy been resolved? Yin Piaomiao snorted. Although it hasn't been resolved, it's not far from being resolved. Oh, you're so confident. The old man muttered in a low voice and sized up Yin Piaomiao again. So, you found someone to deal with the Tianhua Academy students? Don't blame me for reminding you. The new batch of students from the Tianhua Academy, are all top-notch. To be honest, the Tianhua Academy has really put in a lot of effort this time. I don't know where they got such a monstrous group of students to specially come and challenge our royal school. Among the seniors in the royal school for the past 2 years, I have never seen such outstanding students. Alright, stop praising others and diminishing our own morale. Principal Yin waved his hand and said, just wait for a good show later. The past few days had been terrible. Principal Yin had been extremely sullen. Ever since the bunch of bastards from the Tianhua Academy had come to challenge them, the principal had been extremely depressed. It was impossible for the royal school to not have any students who were not good enough to deal with their students. But the problem was that the other party's tutor had made it clear to them from the very beginning that this batch of new students were the freshmen that Tianhua Academy had just accepted this year. If Principal Yun had sent some older students who had been in the academy for 3 to 4 years to deal with this batch of new students, he would have already lost. Regardless of whether the Huatian Academy's teacher was speaking the truth, since the other party had said that they were new students from their academy, the royal school's team of new students naturally could not admit defeat. Dean Yun stood up in high spirits and walked out of the courtyard in large strides. Alright, it's time to go over and watch a good show. Today's weather was very good, so it was time for this dean to hold his head high. Elder Ka chuckled. With a hint of doubt and curiosity in his heart, he followed Dean Yun's footsteps and left Ethereal Peak, heading towards the arena area in the outer city. Today was the same as the previous 2 days. The betting area of the arena was already packed with people early in the morning. However, after a few consecutive matches where it was all one-sided, most of the people who had come to place their bets had bet on Tianhua Academy. Hence, even if they won the match, they would not earn much money and would only be able to join in the fun. Get out of the way. A large fat palm pushed the burly man who was blocking the way to the side, as if he was carrying a chicken. The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air, their eyes filled with astonishment. Chapter 37:15. The burly man who was being lifted up single-handedly had a large build. Based on his weight alone, he should be over 180 caddies. However, it looked like this person lifted him up effortlessly, as though he was lifting a small chick. How could this not be shocking? It's His Excellency Gago. Waves of worshipful exclamations came from the crowd. The way ordinary people looked at high-level cultivators was truly as reverent as a god. With reverence on their faces, they subconsciously retreated to the sides, leaving a path in the middle that could allow 3 people to walk side by side. The man who was respectfully addressed as His Excellency Gago looked to be in the prime of his life. His muscular body was bulging with muscles. When he stood in the crowd, he was like a small hill that was several times wider and thicker than ordinary people. This Vice Captain Gago came together with a beautiful woman. This beautiful woman with a snake-like figure was Tianhua Academy's captain Nie Yaorao. Her seductive figure was delicate and boneless. The two of them had the highest cultivation levels among Tianhua Academy's new students. Nie Yaorao was a level 15 Great Spiritual Master, who possessed a 9th level Wood Spirit. Meanwhile, Gago was a level 15 Great Spiritual Master, who possessed a 9th level Spiritual Fire. These two people's cultivation levels could be said to have reached the peak of the spiritual realm. They were definitely among the top figures among the new students. Who will the Royal Academy send out to accept the challenge today? Following the captain and vice-captain were 15 Tianhua Academy students. The one who spoke was a youth with a head of glossy black hair and a disdainful gaze. Most of their cultivations were level 10 Great Spiritual Masters and above. Even if they were placed in the Royal Academy, they would be considered dazzling rising stars among the new students. Biao Yang was a level 12 Great Spiritual Master with an 8th level Spiritual Fire. His strength was second only to the two captains, and he held the position of a small strategist in the new students' team. The Royal Academy's people are here. Someone shouted loudly, and the crowd instantly became rowdy. It's the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince of the Divine Province is here. The eyes of the Duan family's third young master, Duan Tianya, brightened. He turned to look at the path that the crowd had opened up. Sure enough, he saw the Crown Prince's party walking over. The little stoic student expressionlessly walked at the front. Her academy uniform paired with a bright red ostentatious cape instantly attracted everyone's attention. Qingjio hastily squeezed out of the crowd and excitedly bounced around Duanyu. Duanyu, you're finally back. Hey, let me tell you, these 2 days, the people from Tianhua Academy have been really arrogant. We must teach them a lesson later. The robust man like a small mountain, Gaoxiu, turned his head, and his gaze landed on the delicate little stoic. He furrowed his brows for no reason. Tianhua Academy's new student team will not bully the weak and bully a little girl. Get a few sturdy ones to fight. Everyone looked at each other and subconsciously glanced at the sturdy Gato. If this guy looked down on the stoic-faced little crown princess like this, he was probably going to be in trouble later on. While he was thinking, he saw the little stoic, Prince Mo, Qi Xianxian, and the other 8 people had already leaped onto the stage. 9 people from the Divine Prefecture branch challenge Huatia Academy's new student team. The little stoic said coldly, "Enough nonsense. Send someone out and begin." What a joke. If they didn't beat up the 17 people from Tianhua Academy, how could they earn those 2,000 contribution points per round? Back then, they had agreed with the dean that they would get an additional 2,000 contribution points if they won a round. Chapter 37:16. This gaze carried a hint of naked judgment, causing Jie Su, who was opposite him, to feel his hair stand on end. He actually felt that the young lady in front of him was behaving strangely. How was that possible? This young lady looked like a little girl in her teens. Her hair was not even fully grown, and she actually dared to challenge the Tianhua Academy. She was truly a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. Arbor had just finished his sentence when Mata took a step forward and said with a smile, "Weren't the Tianhua Academy so full of themselves these past 2 days? Why are none of them daring to come up the stage to fight now?" One of the Tianhua Academy students immediately stepped forward, but he was stopped by a middle-aged man with a green scar on his face. "Hey, don't be so anxious. Before the competition, let's set the rules first." This middle-aged man with a green scar was the teacher who had brought the students from the Tianhua Academy to the royal school to cause trouble. His slender eyes were shining with a cunning light. He squinted his eyes and carefully sized up Arbor, Emolien and the rest. These few people gave him a feeling that something was not right. It was as if there was an invisible pressure surrounding them. But looking at their age and the spiritual energy that they exuded, they did not seem to have a high level of cultivation. "My little friends from the Divine Academy, how do you intend to compete? Is it a one-on-one battle or a group battle?" The teacher with the green scar on his face laughed and said, "If it is a group battle, the Tianhua Academy will not take advantage of you. We will send out people with the same number of people as you to battle." Qi Xianxian, little fatty, and the others looked at each other and winked at each other. The little fatty Ko Hongwen took a few steps forward and gave a kind and friendly smile, saying, "Fellow students from the Huatian Academy, you have come from afar and are trying your best to invite us to a friendly spar. The new students from the Divine Academy of the Royal School will naturally do our best to cooperate." Everyone rolled their eyes at the same time. Fatty's words were quite funny. Everyone knew that the Tianhua Academy had come to provoke the Royal School. What did Fatty want to cooperate with them for? Should we work together to beat them up? The scarred instructor was obviously very satisfied with the Fatty's compliments. He smiled and said, "Since both of us don't have any big problems, let's have a friendly one-on-one challenge. What do you all think?" "All right." The students of the Tianhua Academy roared in unison, their voices shaking the heavens as they eagerly responded to their mentor. The little stoic impatiently rolled her eyes. "A load of nonsense. If you want to fight, then let's fight. What's the point of talking so much nonsense before fighting?" Emolien could not help but chuckle. "Be patient, Jojo. They won't have a chance to talk later. Let's be considerate of others." Arbor thought that was right. He secretly took out the storage talisman in his inner world and prepared to fight at any time. "Let my husband take the first round." Emolien patted her little head and said. Arbor blinked and nodded reluctantly. "All right, then be careful." Qi Xianxian Mata, and the rest instantly looked at Arbor and Emolien strangely. The little crown princess actually asked His Highness the Crown Prince to be careful? They understood. Wasn't she just asking His Highness the Crown Prince to hold back his strength and not kill them all at once? Chapter 37:17. Since it is a one-on-one match, for the sake of fairness, we will send out the same 8 members as your Royal Academy's Divine Lands team. No need. Mata immediately waved his hand and rejected the leader's words. He laughed and said, "The Tianhua Academy is a guest from afar. As the host, we must do our best to let our guests come happily and leave satisfied." What a joke! With 9 less people, wouldn't they lose a lot of contribution points? Of course they couldn't just let them pass. The leader with the scar on his face was taken aback, but he laughed and nodded. Since the students of the Divine Lands Academy are so confident, then all right. Let our Tianhua Academy's 17 people experience your skills one by one. Don't cry when the time comes. He had wanted to leave them some face, but after a battle, their spiritual power would be almost completely depleted. These people actually dared to challenge 17 people with just 9 people. That meant that 8 of them would have to fight twice. The leader with the scar on his face looked at the little fatty and the rest, a cold smile on his face. Since the rules of the competition are a one-on-one fair duel, you are not allowed to summon your spiritual beasts, use poisons, hidden weapons and other supplementary items. During the competition, you are allowed to use elixirs, such as spiritual rejuvenation elixirs. Do you have any objections to this? The little fatty and the rest shook their heads in unison. The leader with the scar on his face smiled. Before each round, there are 3 minutes to choose the members. After 3 minutes, if no decision is made, it will be taken as a forfeit. Everyone nodded again. The leader with the scar on his face smiled satisfactorily. These are the rules for now. Do you have anything else to add? After the one-on-one match, we will proceed to a group battle. Sir Jojo said expressionlessly. You can choose 8 members from the 17, who are in the best condition to battle with us. What a joke, 10,000 contribution points per person. It would be a waste not to earn it. This time, they had to earn as much as they could to prevent their contribution points from going into the negatives every few days. They also had to face the ridiculous mission of going to the Great Forest to train for a month. A strange look appeared on the scarred-faced leader's face. After pondering for a moment, he exchanged glances with the enchanting beauty leader. After exchanging glances, they nodded and said, "All right, let's do as this young friend says." Arbor, Little Fatty, and the others jumped off the stage one after another, leaving a large space on the stage. Prince Emo stood there expressionlessly, waiting for the Tianhua Academy students to arrive. This guy did not have the shame of a transcendent god bullying a small fry at all. His face was indifferent, and no one could tell from his expression at all. Duan Yu glanced at him, and couldn't resist silently spitting at this guy. In terms of the level of shamelessness in the world, if this guy claimed to be second, no one would dare to claim first. That old fool with the scarred face from the Tianhua Academy kept saying that for the sake of fairness, he wanted to have a fair one-on-one match with the Divine Prefecture Branch Academy. Who knew that the person in front of them was not a spirit realm or deity realm freshman, but a transcendent realm? Even Duan Yu had to admit that this guy's strength was probably just a smidgen higher than his. If he was not mistaken, this guy's true strength was about to break through to the late hierarch realm. Chapter 37:18. This guy's cultivation speed was truly very strange and abnormal. Previously at the Red River Canyon, he was probably only at the late stage of the Venerable Immortal Realm, possibly not even at the peak stage. That was why they were somewhat helpless against the Temple Master of the Temple of the Gods at that time. However, they didn't expect that this guy's cultivation would soar by leaps and bounds in just a few short months. This was definitely related to the emolien seal in his body. It was just that this guy usually hit it rather well and didn't say anything. Although Duan Yu didn't say anything, he already sensed that this guy's emolien seal might be the type that would become stronger in the later stages of undoing it. Once the seal was undone, his cultivation would increase even more rapidly in the later stages. However, this would also cause his cultivation to be unstable and his cultivation to be false. This guy would probably have to enter seclusion for a while to stabilize his cultivation. At this time, a female member of the Huatian Academy had already leaped onto the stage. Her gaze was somewhat blatantly sizing up Emolian, and her eyes revealed some interest. The man in front of her was very outstanding, so she really couldn't bear to be ruthless. This female member smiled coquettishly at Prince Mo, and there seemed to be a faint glow blossoming from the corners of her eyes. Little big brother, you have to be careful. This little sister also doesn't want to hurt you. The woman threw Prince Mo a tender and sweet look. However, what annoyed her was that this young man in front of her didn't even look at her out of the corner of his eye. He just stood there nonchalantly, and his entire body was full of openings. It was as if the moment she made a move, the other party would immediately collapse. This woman's brows creased slightly, and she immediately summoned a tasseled feather fan from her inner world. Raising her body, she pounced towards Prince Mo at a speed comparable to a streak of light. This punk was so arrogant, so she would let him suffer a little, so that he wouldn't always be so condescending. The feather fan in the woman's hand instantly transformed into a sharp blade, aiming straight for Emolian's chest. With a slash of this spirit weapon, the woman was confident that she could leave a mark on the man in front of her. A mark? The woman who attacked suddenly widened her eyes in midair. There was no other reason. The man who was standing upright slightly raised his hand and waved his sleeve. Her body flew out uncontrollably, and the feather fan in her hand flew out of her hand and landed in the man's hand. Everyone below the stage couldn't help but gasp. Under Prince Mo's gentle pinch, the feather fan turned into a pile of scrap metal and fell to the ground with a rustling sound. To be able to crush a spirit weapon with just one hand, what kind of cultivation was this? Everyone looked at the man in the ring with fear in their eyes. To be honest, this was the first time they had seen the crown prince display his true strength in front of others. Normally, there would be no chance for the crown prince to do this. Whoever dared to cause trouble in front of his highness had already been dealt with by the shadow guards. Moreover, in the academy, other than those in Dragon Flame City, who were more familiar with the crown prince, a portion of people only knew that the crown prince was brilliant in weapon refinement, but they didn't know that his cultivation had also reached an unparalleled level. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent that female member flying out like trash. At this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on the flustered female member with a flushed face. Chapter 37:19. The pitiful woman was smashed into the arena with her body, creating a human-shaped crater. After a long time, the woman finally crawled out of the crater. Her face was a mix of green and black, white and yellow, and was extremely beautiful. Damn it! I didn't even manage to touch the corner of the other party's clothes before I was directly swatted away like a fly facing such a delicate and beautiful woman. This man actually dared to do such a cruel thing. What an unromantic guy. That female team member supported her waist and groaned as she climbed up from the ground. Her pair of seductive eyes were red as she opened her mouth. This little brother, you're too ruthless. Prince Mo still did not even look at her. From the moment this woman went up on stage and used her lousy seduction techniques on him, Emolian had already thought of how to deal with her. Seeing that she was struggling to stand up, Prince Mo directly stretched out a finger and tapped the air in the direction of the woman's head. Bam! The female team member from Tianhua Academy only felt a majestic and mighty aura rush towards her, instantly sending her flying. The woman once again fell into the human-shaped pit that she had formed earlier. She was a little dumbfounded after being smashed. For a long time, she didn't realize that she had been sent flying again. Furthermore, she had been sent flying with just a lift of a finger. What did this mean? This meant that she could not even withstand a lift of a finger from the opponent. The faces of the teachers and students from Tianhua Academy all changed as they looked sharply at the young man in the middle of the arena. From the start to the end, this person did not even take half a step. He only waved his sleeves and lifted his finger. The female team member from Tianhua Academy was smashed into the crater and could not crawl back up. Scarface's expression changed as he raised his head to look in Emolien's direction. He opened his mouth several times, but did not say anything. In the end, it was Tianhua Academy's team leader, Nie Yaorao, who waved her hand, and had two team members go up to the arena to pull out their own team member from the crater. Only then did this one-sided farce come to an end. When everyone saw the female team member being pulled out of the pit, their eyes involuntarily revealed a trace of sorrow. This unlucky woman's entire face was almost flattened. Her nose and mouth were crooked, and saliva was dripping from her mouth uncontrollably. She was completely crushed to the point that her eyes and mouth were crooked. Nie Yaorao glanced at Emolian gravely, her eyes throbbing with fury. The first battle between Tianhua Academy and the Royal Academy had ended in such a bizarre manner. It had to be said that the faces of the teachers and students of Tianhua Academy had been completely disgraced. But in reality, if they knew Emolien's true cultivation level, they probably wouldn't feel embarrassed. They would only look down on Prince Emo for bullying the weak. Shameless to the extreme, Emolien jumped down from the arena and walked to his wife's side with a grin. "Wife, isn't your husband awesome?" Arbor nodded her little head. Her husband had used such an effortless method to crush the people from Tianhua Academy. In that instant, the atmosphere of the battle had reached a boiling point. The Royal Academy students who had been sullen for the past few days were now clamoring for Tianhua Academy to quickly send their second team member up to the arena. The leader with the scarred face chuckled and waved his hand with a cold face. Chapter 37:20. Deputy Captain Gaga's sturdy figure, that resembled a small mountain, shuffled forward a couple of times. Suddenly, his entire body flew into the air like a mountain and crashed into the center of the stage with a loud rumble. Thankfully, this outer city stage was built with limestone and was very sturdy. Even if it was pressed down by this mountain, it didn't budge at all. Gagu patted the bulging muscles on his arms and roared at the Royal Academy students below the stage. This roar was like the roar of a beast, causing the Royal School students who were in an uproar to immediately shut their mouths. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling that this Deputy Captain Gagu was especially like a wild beast. Everyone's gazes landed on Prince Emo and company again, anticipating that Prince Emo would go on stage and crush him again, making this roaring brat piss his pants in terror as he scurried off the stage. Emolien couldn't be bothered with those people's gazes. He lowered his head to look at his wifey and asked with a grin, "How about it? Do you want to go up and fight, or will hubby do it for you?" Arbor rolled up his small sleeves and turned his small head to glance at him. "I'll go meet him. Younger sister. Younger sister." Mu Xingqian impatiently squeezed through the crowd and came to the little stoic's side. "Eldest brother, you're back too." Arbor glanced at Mu Xingqian and didn't mention the Mu family's lousy matter at all. That old geezer Chaoyang still wanted to push the blame for the mess to Sir Jojo. Bah, he was dreaming. Mu Xingqian nodded, and then glanced at the small mountain man on stage. He frowned and said, "Younger sister, you're going up to fight this person? His cultivation is a level 15 great spiritual master. And it looks like his 5 spirits aren't weak either. You look pitiful with your small arms and legs. It's simply too heart-wrenching for you to go up and fight with this Iron Tower-like man." As he spoke, Mu Xingqian kept glancing at Emolien, Duan Muqing and company. His gaze was filled with eerie disdain. What he meant was, you men actually didn't volunteer to fight, and actually wanted your sister to deal with such a burly man. "Big brother, don't worry. This guy looks huge, but Jojo will send him flying with a slap." Xiaomu patted her eldest brother's arm and solemnly raised her small chin, gesturing with her pinky finger. "Isn't it just a little mosquito?" Everyone looked at Motzi Gapo, who was standing on the stage, and looked at each other speechlessly. Can Jojo really send that naga flying? Mu Xingqian looked at Duan Yu and Emolien in confusion. Both of them gave him a helpless look at the same time. 2 minutes later, everyone saw Lord Jojo's slender figure fly up into the sky with a whoosh. After Gago's punch, the little guy was sent flying backward like a small cannonball. With a bang, he was sent flying by someone. After seeing this scene, the scarred instructor's expression became slightly better. It seemed that he could regain all the face that he had lost in the previous match. However, just as this thought formed in his mind, the scarred instructor's expression instantly changed. Disbelief flickered in his eyes as he looked at Arbor, who appeared in front of Gago in a second. What was going on? With the distance this guy flew, it was impossible for her to reach this lightning-like speed, even if she leaped down from such a high altitude. Without another word, the little stoic also followed up with a punch, directly colliding with Gago's thick and solid fist. Chapter 37:21. Jojo is mighty. As Jojo's loyal fan and #1 bestie, our dear Qi Xianxian selectively ignored the fact that Jojo was sent flying earlier. She instantly jumped up in excitement and raised her fists as she roared, cheering for her Sir Jojo. In the next second, this little thing flew out again, at a very bizarre speed, and shot up into the sky. Everyone only saw this fellow's figure skimming through the clouds, before disappearing with a whoosh. Duan Yu pursed his lips, and couldn't resist covering his handsome face. Sorry, Sir Jojo. He wanted to laugh a little. Mu Xingqian. Earlier, younger sister had solemnly vowed that Gaia was merely a mosquito, and that she could send him flying with a casual slap. In the end, the one who was sent flying twice in a row was younger sister, Emo Lien. Prince Emo had nothing to say about his wife's actions. He had to use all his strength to stifle his laughter. Only then could he prevent himself from bursting into unrestrained laughter in front of everyone. He absolutely couldn't laugh at his wife, especially not in front of Duan Yu. Otherwise, he would be in trouble when he got home. With Duan Yu's vile character, and his ability to take advantage of every opening, he would definitely make up all sorts of bad things about him in front of Sir Jojo. Humph. He wasn't stupid, so how could he make this kind of mistake? Uffed. At this time, a discordant burst of laughter instantly attracted everyone's attention. Qi Xianxian and the other simultaneously glared at the laughing fellow with angry gazes. After the little fatty warrior laughed fearlessly, he even added, Jojo is so funny. Don't you all laugh? It was indeed funny. Every time this little thing was sent flying, she would use a teleportation talisman to teleport in front of Gaia. Then she would be sent flying with a punch. Mu Xingqian twitched his mouth and glared at the little fatty. What's so funny? It's not funny at all. No, he had to hold it in on the other side. After Sir Jojo was sent flying 3 times in a row, Gaia's expression also changed in shock. Wasn't this little girl a little too abnormal? With his speed and gravity, even if someone weaker than him wasn't seriously injured, they would at least spit out 2 mouthfuls of blood. However, there was no change in expression on the little girl's stoic face, as if nothing had happened. He had clearly seen her being punched into the air by him time and time again. So why was she able to appear in front of him in the blink of an eye with such a strange and abnormal speed? He didn't know that someone had used the teleportation talisman several times in a row. Every time, he would teleport in front of him at the speed of light to receive the next strike. This was because Lord Jojo was a little excited to find that every time their fists collided, and she was sent flying, the spiritual energy in her body would surge violently. When outsiders couldn't see it, the bones inside her body were cracking. Her body had already reached the peak of the half-step immortal bone state, so she was almost completely immune to the attacks of a level 10 spiritual master and below. Now she was transforming into the immortal bone state. As long as she entered the immortal bone state, even if a level 5 or level 6 god master came, it would be difficult to hurt Jojo, let alone a level 15 spiritual master in front of her. When Lord Jojo was sent flying by Gaia for the first time, he discovered this shocking change. Chapter 37:22. As long as she circulated her spiritual energy in accordance with this force, her body would gradually undergo a rapid transformation. Not only was she transforming into an immortal bone, what was even more comical was that her previously stagnant minor realm was also starting to loosen. She seemed perhaps to be advancing towards the peak of level 14 Great Spiritual Master Realm. It didn't take long for her to advance from level 14 Great Spiritual Master Realm to gradual accomplishment, initial accomplishment, and phenomenal accomplishment, but she was now inexplicably about to step into the peak realm. Sir Jojo suddenly stood in front of Gappo and shouted at him. Continue. Continue? Continue what? Everyone couldn't resist glaring at this oddball in front of them. Continue to be beaten? Continue to ascend? How much did he deserve a beating? Gappo's complexion was also terrible to the extreme. He continuously punched out 3 times, and each punch consumed a large amount of spiritual energy. It wasn't like he was just punching for fun. Big sister, this was going to consume spiritual energy, alright? After 3 punches, he felt that he didn't have enough energy to continue, so he could only pause on the spot and pant slightly. His body was like a small hill, and his bulging muscles were exposed. At this moment, it seemed as if they were drenched by the rain, as beads of sweat seeped out. The little stoic started to get impatient after waiting for 3 seconds. Why wasn't this guy attacking? Hurry and continue to punch. Her immortal bone transformation was only a few steps away. According to her conjecture, she would definitely advance if she punched him 3 more times. Roar! Gappo bellowed angrily, his tiger-like eyes glaring as he concentrated his energy into his dantian. He tightly clenched his fists that were the size of copper alms bowls, and he suddenly roared, "Take this!" Everyone watched as his bulging body rose from the ground, and the bulging muscles on his arms bulged. His 2 punches directly struck out, forming a blazing hurricane. As if a storm had descended, the world spun, and it crashed toward the little stoic. "Jojo!" Qi Xianxian cried out in alarm, and her eyes instantly widened. She wanted to rush onto the stage with a step. The little fatty was sharp-eyed and deft, and he hastily pulled her back. "Little great aunt, don't mess things up." He kept feeling that Sir Jojo was probably holding back and brewing some big move. Otherwise, how could he be beaten to the sky time and time again? Little fatty clearly felt that he had guessed the truth, especially when he saw Emolien, Mu Xingqian, and the others beside him. They were calm, and did not look like they were going to rush forward to help. He was even more certain that he had guessed correctly, with His Highness the Crown Prince's protectiveness of the young Crown Princess. If the little stoic was truly in danger, how could the Crown Prince sit idly by? On the other side, Jojo was instantly enveloped by the fiery dragon-like hurricane. His entire body was shrunk in a ball of fire. After being hammered by Gatto, he was once again sent flying into the sky. Her slender body was so small and pitiful in front of Gatto, who was as strong as a mountain. The onlookers couldn't bear to look and covered their eyes. Someone even let out a long sigh. During the freshman's opening ceremony, the Crown Princess beat the barbarian tribe like a dog. Sure enough, it's because her spiritual beast is powerful. That's right. Several people nodded and discussed in low voices. Back then, the Crown Princess was truly frightening. She relied on a giant sand scorpion king to beat the crap out of that barbarian tribe student. But now, putting aside the spiritual beast's might, the young Crown Princess was at her wits' end against this iron tower of a man. Gatto also breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 37:23. To be honest, every time she appeared beside him like a ghost, he felt a lot of pressure. Earlier, he had used 100% of his strength to envelop her with 9 layers of spirit fire and flung her away. From the looks of it, he should be the winner of this match. Gaia turned to look below the stage and said to his scarred mentor, "Mentor, you should be able to announce the results of the match." The scarred mentor nodded in satisfaction and said with a beaming smile, "I announce that in the second round of the one-on-one finals between the Royal Academy and Tianhua Academy, my Gaia from Tianhua Academy wins." "Did you win?" A voice suddenly sounded behind Gaia. Everyone was shocked. Gaia also hurriedly sucked in a breath and turned around to see the little stoic, who had suddenly appeared behind him. "How did you?" Gaia looked at the little girl in front of him in shock, and looked up at the sky. A golden sun was faintly discernible above the blue sky. He had clearly sent her flying, all right? Why did this girl appear beside him without a sound every time? "You used a teleportation talisman," the scarred mentor belatedly exclaimed. "You used a talisman? What a joke." Mu Xingqian coldly interrupted the mentor and said, "We are from a talisman patrician family. Could it be that we can't even use talismans?" "You are a young lady from the Mu clan of the Divine Province?" the scarred mentor exclaimed in shock. "What, this Tianhua Academy mentor? You aren't going to say that our Jojo used a talisman to cheat, right?" Qi Xianxian harumphed and preemptively said, "I'm telling you, The previous series of rules were all set by you guys. At that time, you didn't say that talismans couldn't be used. You only said that poison couldn't be used, right? The scarred mentor was only slightly shocked, and didn't mean to say that Arbor used a talisman against the rules. Now that he was reprimanded by Qi Xianxian, he couldn't help but smile wryly and shake his head. I didn't mean it that way. Since we have already agreed on the rules, there is naturally no reason to change them now. The mentor coughed awkwardly. Tianhua Academy still cared about their reputation, and couldn't go back on their word under the noses of the outer court students. Arbor glanced at the black-faced Gatto, raised his small fist, and said expressionlessly, "It's my turn. You were very happy when you punched this Lord Xiao into the sky, right? Now I'll let you take 3 punches from Jojo-sama." As soon as Arbor's words fell, a small fist immediately smashed towards Garbo's chest. Previously, every time he was sent flying, he could feel the spiritual energy in his meridians circulating vigorously. That was why he was given the opportunity to hit her. Now it was time to get back at them. Arbor's fist landed and spirit force surged out. This caused Jie Su, who was already a bit exhausted, to be shocked. He subconsciously crossed his arms in front of his chest and welcomed the little girl's heavy blow. Bang! After a muffled sound, Gahu felt his entire body tremble slightly. His body was pushed by a fierce force, and his feet brushed against the ground of the arena as he moved backwards. In the eyes of outsiders, this scene was simply a bit comical. It was as if they were looking at a small, sturdy mountain that was suddenly pushed back several meters with a punch. Gahu's body was so strong, but he actually moved back a distance of more than 3 meters from the little stoic's punch. Chapter 37-24. And it wasn't over yet. After the little stoic punched him, she flew forward again with a trace of excitement on her face. She gathered spiritual energy in her left hand, clenched her fingers into a fist, and punched Garu's chest again. Boom! Boom boom! After 5 fierce punches, Garu, who only had the strength to defend himself, was pushed to the edge of the stage by the little stoic's repeated punches. The audience was already dead silent, and everyone stared dumbly at this scene. Ha! The stoic face was truly formidable. Looking at her hammering Gakuo, it was as if she was looking at a small ant pushing up a large mountain. This kind of visual contrast really made people curse in their hearts. In the blink of an eye, the little girl suddenly leaped into the air and flew behind Garu, punching him toward the center of the stage. Originally, if the little girl punched him again, Garu would fall off the stage and lose without a doubt. Unexpectedly, the little girl punched him to the other side of the stage. This stage was very large, with a distance of more than 50 meters from the left side to the right side. This way, Garu would have to suffer more than a dozen punches from the little stoic. The spectators couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for Garu. Just how much did the little girl dislike him, that she would treat him like a doll, and beat him here and there on the stage? With this in mind, everyone looked at Garu with sympathetic gazes. Yet at this moment, everyone suddenly discovered a strong light burst out from the little girl's body, connecting heaven and earth, practically blotting out the sun. The spiritual energy in the surroundings converged from all directions. This spiritual energy of heaven and earth was extremely pure, and seemed to emit an endless power. It wrapped around Arbor and encircled her entire body. The entire venue sunk into a dead silence. Even the little stoic's teammates couldn't resist opening their mouths, but they immediately shut their mouths in silence. Mu Xingqian's eyes lit up as he looked at his younger sister on the stage. He really didn't expect that his younger sister would advance, just by purely competing with someone in spiritual energy. Because it was only a small realm advancement, Arbor advanced very quickly this time. Moreover, she was already prepared beforehand, and followed the method of advancing quickly. As for stabilizing her realm, it wouldn't be too late to do it later. A quarter of an hour later, Xiaomu slowly walked out from a spiritual energy vortex. Her clear eyes gazed coldly at Garu. Although the latter was a bit surprised, he still steadied his emotions and stared at her with a complicated gaze. I only lost because I underestimated my opponent. Garu stubbornly finished this sentence. Suddenly, he discovered that countless green vines had sprung out around him and surrounded him at an extremely terrifying speed. The vines suddenly hugged together, and dozens of vines that were as thick as the mouth of a bull instantly hugged Ga2 in the center. Gato was taken aback. He couldn't help but roar. Countless flames rose around his body. He wanted to use the power of fire spirit to tear the vines around his body into ashes. However, it didn't have the slightest effect. His fire spirit actually didn't have the slightest effect on the vines around him. Garu abruptly turned his head, and his eyes widened to the size of copper bells. He shouted almost hysterically, What did you do?" Ignorant and ill-informed, Arbor coldly swept that man a glance with a hint of mockery in her expression. Chapter 37:27. If such a swords might landed on the body of a rank 15 great spirit master, wouldn't he be thoroughly finished? Just as everyone looked regretfully at Nia Yaorao, thinking that she was about to turn into ashes, the 1,000 lightning bolts, suspended in the air, suddenly paused. Just like that, they paused in midair under everyone's gazes. Nia Yaorao reflexively stretched out her hands to block in front of her. At this moment, when he raised his head slightly, he saw that the dense illusory sword lights were right in front of him. It was as if they had been frozen, and they were all hanging outside his defensive barrier. The little stoic expressionlessly clenched her fist, and all of the spiritual energy she released was obediently under her control. This scene would be extremely shocking to anyone who saw it. Nia Yaorao never knew that sword moves and spiritual energy could actually be stopped after they were released. And in the blink of an eye, under Sir Jojo's forceful clench, these 1,000 sword shadows actually turned into faint starlight fragments and abruptly disappeared into the air. Whoosh! At this moment, the crowd below the arena erupted into a series of roars at almost the same time. Heavens, what did I see just now? The crown princess pushed aside the sword intent she released? Jojo's sword art is truly too impressive, Qi Xianxian muttered to herself. It's more than impressive. The little fellow's grasp of the sword art has simply reached the point of perfection, and she can release and withdraw it as she pleases. Duan Yu praised with a faint smile. The comprehension of the sword art was ever-changing in the blink of an eye. Sir Jojo could actually make the 1,000 sword shadows, which were so powerful, stop in midair, and even make them vanish like bubbles in an instant. This kind of control over the sword and spiritual energy, among all the people present, probably only those at the transcendent god realm and above dared to claim that they had such godlike control. The cheers inside and outside the stage didn't dissipate for a long time. Everyone's breathing quickened, and their complexions flushed. They felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Watching the little lady fight truly made people feel too contented. From the little lady's attack to the end of the battle, it was actually merely a matter of 15 minutes. It was over. The battle was completely over. Nia Yaorao slightly opened her eyes and slowly put down her hands that were blocking in front of her eyes. The woman's pupils shrank as she looked at the ground around her. Although the thousands of sword shadows did not penetrate her body and extinguish her soul remembrance, she was still able to control her soul. However, the frightening thing was that these sword intents had already pierced through the ground beneath her feet. At this time, other than the flat ground where she was standing, the ground around her had already become riddled with holes and spider web-like marks. If this sword really came down, Nia Yaorao didn't dare to imagine. The difference between him and the little girl was like heaven and earth. Nia Yaorao took a deep breath. When she looked at the little stoic before her, her gaze changed slightly, and her expression was extremely solemn. At this time, the little stoic had already landed lightly on the ground. She put away the startled swan dagger that had suddenly returned to her hand after a long cry in the air. The entire dagger was enveloped in a faint halo of light, and it clanged restlessly in Xiao Mu's hand. Arbor's eyes brightened slightly, and he suddenly fed it a drop of blood with a flick of his finger. The entire dagger immediately released a strong light in her hand, and it seemed to break through the day in an instant. It suddenly slashed open the horizon with a fierce force. Chapter 37:28. The little stoic was slightly shocked. At this moment, the crowd had sunk into a deathly stillness. The startled swan dagger had always existed in her conscious in the form of a spirit weapon. However, it was very intelligent and had always been able to communicate with her mind. She didn't expect that after so many years of experience, a drop of her blood would actually break open the seal on its surface, causing it to suddenly advance into a divine weapon. What was originally a faint layer of silver light had now transformed into a faint golden light, instantly blinding the eyes of everyone present. Haha, the little girl advanced in the battle just now. This wasn't strange at all. What was strange was that the spirit weapon the little girl summoned from her conscious also advanced along with the little girl's advancement in this instant. Right, this was the logic, right? Arbor stood in the center of the arena with an indifferent expression. Suddenly, a giant veil of light emerged from her body. The spectators felt that they might have gone crazy, right? Otherwise, why would the little girl look like she was about to advance again? Xiao Xiao has advanced. Qi Xianxian, who was expressionless, suddenly said. Little Fatty turned around and glanced at her. He felt like laughing. He felt that when Xianxian said this, her expression was very similar to Jojo's stoic face. That kind of lifeless expression made the little fatty think that Xuanxuan's current mood definitely wasn't as tranquil as she appeared on the surface. Luyu swallowed her saliva. Jojo advanced twice in a day. She's very impressive. I think she's already at the level of a monster. Qi Xianxian expressionlessly rolled her eyes. Although spirit energy gathered from all directions, it was very obvious that it was running out of energy. It couldn't be helped. When she advanced to peak level 14 Great Spiritualist, the little girl had absorbed a lot of spirit energy into her body. Now, it was clearly insufficient. In order to break through the level 15 Great Spiritualist barrier, she couldn't immediately return to Paradise Planet to advance under everyone's watchful eyes. Arbor could only take out the large pile of spirit stones stored in her inner world. She simply sat cross-legged on the spot and spat out spirit stones one by one. Every time the spiritual energy from the spirit stone entered her body, the spirit stone would shatter into powder in her hands. Thus, the group of people directly saw that the large pile of spirit stones that was originally piled up at the little girl's feet was rapidly being destroyed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the little stoic set up a spirit-guiding talisman formation with a flick of her finger in order to gather the spiritual energy within a radius of 50 kilometers as quickly as possible, absorbing all the surrounding spiritual energy as much as possible in the shortest time possible. Thus, everyone soon saw a spectacle. The spiritual power within 100 miles surged in the direction of the Wind Thunder City and gathered around the little crown princess, wrapping her in it. The scarred instructor from Tianhua Academy looked at the stoic-faced lady in shock. After a long while, he finally shut his mouth in silence. What kind of outstanding talent was this? The royal school was indeed full of talents. The Tianhua Academy was still too ignorant. He had originally thought that by recruiting such an outstanding batch of students this year, they would be able to compete with the royal school. But in the end, things didn't go as planned. The Tianhua Academy was viciously slapped in the face by someone else's child. Although it was painful, he couldn't yell at the top of his lungs, or else it would be even more embarrassing. Chapter 37-31. Tianhua Academy had lost 3 matches in a row, and they were all holding back their anger. Seeing Ma Ta standing arrogantly on the stage with an arrogant look on his face, some of the Huatian Academy students were naturally unconvinced. Thus, the level 12 Great Spiritual Master Biao Liang leaped onto the stage and cupped his fists in Mata's direction. Little brother, please enlighten me. Mata's eyes lit up, and he was eager to give it a try. One had to know that before this, Xiao Qiao had given each of them a cultivation technique that suited them very well in Chaoyang restaurant. Ever since he had learned the spiritual technique, he had not had the chance to use it. Now that he had met this unlucky Biao Liang, he finally had a target to practice on. Mata, this guy, had always been a playboy. At this moment, he actually grinned at Biao Liang. Speaking of which, it would have been better if he did not smile. But once he smiled, Biao Liang felt his hair stand on end and raised his guard for no reason. His eyes were fixed on Mata, and he did not dare to move an inch. Biao Liang was a level 12 great spiritual master and had 8 levels of spiritual fire. His strength was not weak. Mata had improved quite quickly recently and had already broken through to become a level 12 great spiritual master. Logically speaking, the two of them should be evenly matched. But as everyone knew, their spiritual techniques were different. Even if the 5 spirits were at the same level, the effects they could bring out would be vastly different. Mata had learned the Misty Mist spiritual technique from the Morning Sun restaurant. It was a heaven-level spiritual technique and was extremely rare. It was already considered good for a small family to have a high-level spiritual technique. Just like the Broken Book Spirit Division record that Jojo had obtained from the Maple Pavilion, it was a Supreme Saint-level technique. Different levels of spiritual techniques would bring about a world of difference in the effects of spiritual energy. Mata's Empyrean spear danced around him without any openings. Biao Liang, who was fighting against him, could not even get close to the corner of his clothes. After a long time, Biao Liang's mood began to become gloomy. He mobilized all the spiritual energy in his body and formed a fireball, smashing it towards Mata's chest. Mata laughed, and with a wave of water spirit in his hand, he easily dispelled the fireball he sent out. At the same time, wisps of misty water spirit power rose from Mata's body. They were densely distributed, like strings of tiny water droplets scattered around his body. Shimen Chang and the other Huatian Academy students, who were watching from below the arena, could not help but narrow their eyes. Biao Liang, who was standing in the ring, didn't notice it, but everyone below the ring noticed it. At this moment, Biao Liang seemed to be surrounded by a misty mist, completely enveloped by the opponent's water spiritual energy. Mata raised his hand and thousands of small water droplets turned into a dense cluster of hidden weapons that shot towards Liang Liang's body. When Biao Liang was attacked by the first round of water droplets, his skin immediately became red and swollen. He hurriedly activated his defensive ring to increase his defense. At the same time, countless tiny water droplets rose up and smashed against his defensive barrier. Biao Liang's face changed, and he quickly retreated. He was hit by the seemingly unintentional water droplets and was complaining incessantly in his heart. Just as the water droplets were about to break through his defensive barrier, a silver spear that was moving swiftly towards him suddenly flicked the sharp blade in his hand and threw him off the arena. Chapter 37-32. Biao Liang admit defeat. Biao Liang was not a sore loser. He felt that if he continued to fight with his opponent, his body would be pierced by the water droplets. Hence, he immediately shouted loudly and admitted defeat. Mata chuckled and cupped his hands in Biao Liang's direction. "Brother, thank you for letting me win." He had also benefited from Sir Jojo. If he had not learned excellent spiritual techniques in the past month, he would not have won so easily. Lady Qiao Qiao glanced at the two people fighting on the stage, then turned her head to the smiling Principal Yin and said, 8,000 contribution points. Principal Yun's lips twitched. The members beside the little stoic could not help but face-bomb. "Qiao Qiao Ha, you're being too straightforward. This is not good. It's easy to make people laugh in the following matches." The Huatian Academy students lost more and more confidence. They were originally proud prodigies. Before they stepped out of the underworld state, they thought that they were the cream of the crop among the youths at their age. In the end, they suffered defeat after defeat in the Royal Academy and lost so many matches. No one had the confidence to continue. When the little fatty entered the arena and cupped his hands in the direction of the Huatian Academy students with a smile. In the Huatian Academy, no one wanted to enter the arena to continue fighting. If this went on, they would lose whatever little confidence they had left. The demons from the Royal Academy had left an indelible and terrifying mark in their hearts. The little stoic turned around and sneered. "What, you can't afford to lose? If your heart is not firm enough, then what's the difference between you and a salted fish? In the future, we will become an inner demon in your training. As long as you think of how powerful we are, you will be so scared that you won't be able to close your eyes, and your mind will be filled with our tall figures." Mata and the others, Jojo was too sharp-tongued. Although what he said could possibly become the truth, it was too strange for him to tear apart their brutalized hearts and say it directly. The woman who had previously fought with Mo Lian and was then beaten to a pulp by Prince Mo with a single finger couldn't help but shriek. You! Who are you calling a salted fish trash? I'm talking about you guys. The little stoic's small face was cold as she said indifferently. It doesn't matter if your body is crippled. You'll still have a chance to fight after you get up. If his will was crippled, then he would really be crippled. Are you all trash? No. The group of Tianhua Academy students stared angrily at the stoic face in front of them. Then continue the previously agreed upon battle. The little stoic's apathetic gaze swept past their faces. Don't let other people look down on you. A student from the Tianhua Academy, who had backed off earlier, gritted his teeth and jumped onto the stage with all his might. I'll fight. That's more like it. Sir Jojo glanced at them expressionlessly. Wife, you're so nice. Crown Prince Mo grasped his wifey's paw with a grin, his eyes brimming with adoration. You even encouraged them, making them pull themselves together again and strive to improve themselves. It had to be known that if it weren't for Jojo's provocation earlier, these trash would have already been mentally defeated by this group of genius little monsters in front of them. Once an inner demon really formed, it wouldn't be beneficial to their cultivation in the future. Chapter 37-33. Moreover, after the mental demon's influence expanded, it might even cause the spiritual ruin realm to shatter, leading to the terrifying consequences of destroying one's cultivation for life. This was naturally something that Arbor did not wish to see. They had no enmity with the Huatian Academy group, and it was only a sparring match. There was no need to harm them to that extent. Lady Jojo expressionlessly glanced at her husband and harumphed. She proudly turned her head away. Who's encouraging them? I just can't bear to part with those contribution points. After saying that, she turned to look at Dean Yun and grumpily shouted, Did you remember it all? 30,000 contribution points. If it was possible, Yin Piaomiao really wanted to slap this imp to death. This fellow's words really made one's teeth ache. It was extremely uncomfortable. What's with that look? Arbor cast a sidelong glance at Dean Yun and suspiciously peered at him. You can't be trying to trick us, right? We can't be short of contribution points. Dean Yun instantly blew his beard and glared. He resisted the urge to slap the imp and squeezed out each word through gritted teeth. Don't worry, you won't be short of a single contribution point. Not me, it's us. The little fellow pointed at the people around her. You guys. Dean Yun was so angry that he wanted to send this little brat flying with a kick. Arbor looked at him strangely. You can't be thinking of kicking me, right? This time, Mu Xingchen really could not hold it in anymore, because he had been holding it in for quite a while. He really could not hold back his laughter. At the same time, he was completely convinced by Prince Mo and Duan Little Four. These two obviously had a chance. Their eyes were about to go crazy from laughing, but on the surface, they could still pretend to be so indifferent and calm. This skill was definitely not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Eldest brother, you're laughing at me. Lady Jojo immediately turned her head, and her gaze landed on her eldest brother. Dean Yun immediately rolled his eyes at the back of her head. Please, you're so funny. How long can you hold it in and not laugh out loud? Eldest brother, how can you laugh at Jojo? Mo Lian immediately began to dutifully condemn Mu Xingchen. At the side, Duan Yu also quickly coughed and said, Eldest brother, you really shouldn't have done that. This is not funny at all. Mu Xingchen. Duan Little Four, don't think that I can't hear the laughter in your voice when you cough to cover your laughter. Mu Xingchen pursed his lips and quickly said, Xiao Xiao, big brother didn't smile just now. Everyone, Mu Xingchen, you're too funny. Who did he learn this habit of lying through his teeth? Amidst the laughter and laughter, the 17 battles of the Huatian Academy's 17 participants finally came to an end. The Royal Academies was the final victory. What was different from before was that although the 17 people from the Tianhua Academy had lost 17 matches in a row, they had fought until the end. The group battle ended with the Tianhua Academy admitting defeat. Qi Xianxian, and the rest saw that the Tianhua Academy students were indeed exhausted, and did not force them to continue with the group battle. Spiritual, 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 they to you, and the to spiritual to spiritual, spiritual. How could they compete with Qi Xian Xian and the rest when their spiritual, spiritual elixir could recover 10% of their spiritual, spiritual in one go? Forget it. Let them off whenever possible. Anyway, the contribution points were already in their hands. Everything else did not matter. Arbor turned to look at Dean Yin. Hurry up, we'll return to Winter Forest Court first. Hurry up my ass. What a worrisome little girl. Chapter 37-34. Principal Yin fumed with rage as he watched her turn around and leave with Emolien's group. What else could this fellow ask him to hurry up? Wasn't it just to hurry up and transfer the contribution points to his account? Dean Yin rolled his eyes disdainfully at the little stoic's departing figure. Elder Ke chuckled and said, Dean, this batch of children is rather outstanding. Fortunately, you're used to planning ahead and recruiting talents from all over the 3 continents. That's how you were able to escape by a fluke this time. Dean Yin chuckled at Elder Ke. Fluke. Which eye of yours sees fluke? The little stoic's team had a crushing victory, all right? Fluke, your whole family is fluke. Elder Ke rubbed his nose resentfully. He turned around and smiled at the group of students. Everyone, go back to your studies. Do whatever you need to do. Everyone had watched more than 10 very exciting battles, and their minds were still excited at the moment. Thus, they left in groups, still talking about the previous battles, and the beautiful and colorful scenes of the competition of spiritual techniques. Arbor's group returned to Winter Forest Court. After eating a simple meal, they returned to their rooms to rest. Early the next morning, someone came to report that the Huatian Academy group had already bid farewell to the dean and were returning to their own academies. When Arbor heard this news, she felt a little regretful. Didn't the Huatian Academy say that they had to fight 100 battles before they would stop provoking them this time? She originally thought that she could continue to perform in the arena today and earn some contribution points. In the end, the contribution points left early in the morning. How disappointing. When Arbor was eating breakfast, her little face was still puffed up with anger. Qi Xian Xian and the others glanced at her and couldn't help but ask, Jojo, what's wrong? You didn't sleep well yesterday? Sir Jojo said unhappily. The contribution points ran away. Qi Xian Xian stuffed a bun into her mouth and opened her mouth in a daze. She said vaguely, contribution points? Mu Xingchen couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jojo means that the Huatian Academy students who came to challenge the Royal Academy left early in the morning. Big brother, you're laughing at Jojo. Emo Lian and Duan Yu exclaimed in unison. Their small, accusatory gazes made it seem as if Big Brother Mu had done something wicked beyond redemption. Mu Xingchen was speechless. Jojo, Sama looked at his big brother sternly. Big brother, is Jojo very funny? No, it's not funny. As Mu Xingchen said this, he grumpily glared at Emo Lian and Duan Yu. The 2 boys were clearly laughing like crazy in their eyes, but in their hearts they kept saying, Jojo is so funny. However, their expressions were extremely serious. They were simply 2 perverts with a sharp contrast. For the next 2 days, we will cultivate well in the court. I heard that the preliminaries of the Heavenly Yuan ranking contest will be held on the 18th. There are only 2 days left. Mu Xingchen skillfully changed the topic and said with a smile, Let's conserve our energy and store up our energy. When the time comes, we'll be in an especially good mental state to deal with this abnormal preliminaries. Big brother, is the preliminaries of the Heavenly Yuan ranking very difficult? Sir Jojo blinked. I heard that the Academy also has a team competition for the Earth Yuan ranking. Could it be that it doesn't require preliminaries? Mu Xingchen swept a strange glance over the curious crowd. The Earth Yuan ranking contest doesn't require preliminaries, because those who participate in the Earth Yuan ranking contest must be within the top 500 of the Heavenly Yuan ranking.